Welcome to All Politics Are Local,
Oh, t-
America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. This is Jonathan Alston. We are here with co-host Rafiza Shahabuddin and Zaid Mohammed, and we know that, and we are honored to have in our regular segment the Honorable Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. Starting off this show, we have a packed show. Just very briefly, we'll go over the different people who are coming on. At 6:30, we have Rebecca Awakwe of the ACLU and Edwin Chino Ortiz of Returning Citizens on Governor Murphy's latest round of commutations. At 7 o'clock, we have Darryl Dwayne, manager of community engagement at the Newark Museum. And at 7:30, we're going to have Larry Ham come on and talk about the latest conference that he is doing later this month. That
MLK
we're going to learn more.
Convention, April 26th.
The April
MLK people
26th
convention,
convention,
April 26th, Essex County College.
and at 8 o'clock we have Linda Carter coming on talking about the Supreme Court and the Alien Enemies Act. That is something that it should really concern everyone. And at 8:30 we have DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop. Thank you so much. I'm just brushing this thing off in my eye. But thank you so much for coming on and being on uh, today. We know that there are a lot of things that are going on that are crazy, and we have labeled this show for tonight, doing the people's work in a time of chaos, and all of our guests are talking to some extent about that theme. You are doing the people's work in the people's house in a time of chaos. So welcome. And how are you? How are you doing?
I mean, it's
That's a good
Friday.
question.
It's Friday. It's another day, and underneath the Trump administration. So it's always a very eventful day. And I'm still pushing, still holding on.
Okay.
How are you
Uh,
guys doing?
doing
At a time, brother. Should we call Jonathan? Let me ask a broad question real quick because Congresswoman already got her connection. It's called In the Loop, right? With Congresswoman McIver. Should we rebrand her segment as In the Loop with our Congresswoman?
That's fine. We send out a weekly newsletter about
Yes,
being in the
ma'am.
loop with us, just making sure, I mean, it's a way for us to make sure people are staying up to date, knowing what's going on. There's so much going on. I mean, literally, we could do in the loop every day. But we want to make sure that we're making sure residents have the information that they need, know what I've been up to, because once again, I'm working for the people, and they need to know what I've been doing for the week and what's coming up. So, yeah, if you haven't subscribed to that, visit McIver.house.gov to make sure that you subscribe to our weekly newsletter.
Right on to that. Right
so
on to that.
we and so we will definitely do that. And when we're looking at things that might be of concern to people right now, and throwing this out there, um, all these cuts that are coming down. The Department of Education was cut. There might be cuts coming to hit New Jersey and specifically coming to hit our district. We know you're in Congress. We know that Congress hasn't passed any cuts, but we know those cuts are coming anyway. What can we expect? What's going on with that?
Well, let's just talk about this week alone. Once again, Republicans went in to deal with another bill that has billions of dollars of cuts to it. There's still just vague language in there. They keep on saying, oh, it doesn't say anything in the bill about cutting Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. But how do you get to billions of dollars of cuts without such, as well as raising the debt limits, the debt level limit ceiling? Like, how do you get to that? Like, you can't even describe how do you get to there. You say there's no language in there to cut these things, but how do you get to these cuts then? How do you get to giving these tax breaks? And they just cannot answer the question. They're just like, oh, it won't be any cuts, it won't be any cuts. But at the end of the day, we know we cannot cut billions of dollars from our budget and not touch these essential services. So I think that that's something that is definitely a problem for residents, right? People are scared, wondering what is going to happen to Medicaid, what is going to happen to Social Security. and other programs. And so folks should be concerned. And, I'm concerned as their representative because we keep asking questions of them of what is happening. They basically, what happened yesterday in the House, they basically, passed this budget, and it has to go through different processes in terms of like what is going to be cut, how much from each, pot, and basically then has to go to committee for the committees to decide how they would make these cuts, what is going to happen. So there's a level of different processes that still needs to happen. But I think what is even more concerning for people is that we're not getting straight, concrete answers from the Trump administration. It's just, floating in air. And it's like, hey, what is happening? Why can you not tell us what is going to be cut? What is the plan? And they just do not have a plan. These folks, the same thing with the tariffs. Let's go into the week of tariff drama once again. The president, just playing games with the economy. We saw trillions of dollars get lost. The market dropped. It was a ridiculous day. Everybody from economists to all of these folks talking about how this was terrible, like how this is just a bad day for us, people's 401ks, retirement funds, losing dollars. And this guy is just like making it up as he goes. It's just no leadership. And honestly, quite frankly, while people think like he's just stupid and doesn't know what he's doing, I truly believe that too. But then on another side, they definitely know what they're doing. Like this to me was a definitely a targeted, manipulated situation that they did to the stock market. I truly believe so that they can go out there and buy up stocks, and make money for their friends at, low rates. And to me, it was just like a plant manipulation of the stock market based off using these tariffs. And I'm happy to sign on to a letter that my colleague, Stephen Horsforth out of Las Vegas did to call for an investigation to see like, who brought stocks, what was happening during this time. You got to look into the devil in the detail of this stuff, like, and see what has happened and what has occurred during this time when they put these tariffs on, and then all of a sudden, oh, no tariffs, another pause for 90 days. Like, it's like
what you're talking about is this need for an investigation around this tariff hoax and insider trading, which is illegal.
Exactly.
That looks like is a part of this con game that's going on.
Exactly.
I just wanted to put a pin in that for our listeners.
It's definitely a con game going on. Remember, people have gone to jail for less, around this same kind of behavior. And so, we look forward to like pressing, folks to do an investigation on this and find out what is going on. But at the end of the day, once again, just another week of chaos with the administration. Also this week, the Congress passed the SAVE Act, which is this, I call it Jim Crow 2.0, suppressing the vote, talking about making this bill to make it illegal for people who are non-citizens to vote. Like that's already a law. Like we didn't need this, hurdle or suppression to make the law stronger. Like it just doesn't make sense. Basically, demanding that a woman have like a birth certificate and a ID match. Many people know women have changed their last names, gotten married. I don't know how many people go back and get a new birth certificate after they that just is not the case, especially for less fortunate communities. They're not going through the hassle of going down to these different departments or wherever they might have been born at, worrying about trying to get through that process. Say you weren't born here in this country, like going to get a birth certificate, it is just another way for Republicans to suppress the vote and just make it difficult for people to get registered to vote. It was unnecessary. And once again, how is this bill doing anything to help Americans today, right now, with the things they need help with, like making cost of living less expensive, dealing with affordable rent, bringing down the price of eggs and groceries? Like, how are we dealing with the everyday issues of American people? The SAVE Act isn't doing that. Once again, just wasting their time on issues and things that are not important to the American people. So, that passed yesterday. Of course, I voted hell no to that. I'm not with any kind of bill that's to suppress the vote against the people. Not up my alley. So definitely it was a no for me. And I voted no to that crazy budget that they put forward. So those are some of the crazy things that have been happening this week. I think Some other things that people have definitely been talking about, Jonathan, you mentioned it in the beginning, is around the Department of Education. Definitely super high concern for us. Many people know that New Jersey is looking to lose about $85 million from federal dollars because of the dismantling of the Department of Education and restricting our federal dollars. I cover the largest Title I district in New Jersey, and so that is definitely a problem. I was proud to lead a letter this week to Linda McMahon, I mean, our Secretary of
Right.
Education. Crazy to even say that out of my mouth right now. To lead a letter to
Right.
basically demanding that this is unacceptable. I'm happy that all of New Jersey delegation, all of the Democrats, my Democratic colleagues signed on to that letter, because not just my districts are, is in jeopardy of losing dollars. Theirs are as well. And so we're demanding answers and asking them to reconsider this situation, because we cannot afford to lose these dollars for our kids. I think, I want to spend a little time on this because I hear a lot of ignorance behind what it means in dismantling the Department of Education. I see people online sometimes like, oh, kids can't read, they're behind this level. I mean, or this and this and that. Like, how what's the problem with dismantling a Department of Education that's not working for kids? Like, I think people need to understand the different levels of departments of education. One, you have the federal level with Department of Education in Washington, D.C. You have the state Department of Education. You have local school boards and things of that nature. And I think many people are putting the federal piece of it, like the Department of Education at the federal level, responsible for everything that happens in school districts. And that is not true. Like, I want to tell you, all the listeners, that is not the case. When it comes to the federal Department of Education, they're dealing with federal funding, helping children, number one, that have special needs. They're dealing with civil rights. So there is a lot to consider when you are okay with this administration dismantling the Department of Education. One, because of the federal dollars. Where do you think the resources are going to come from to be able to educate children with disabilities, right? Like, I mean, the regular school districts, Title I districts, cannot take on or consume the cost of such. And that is why departments of education are so important at the federal level, because they provide these dollars. And so, once again, something that we cannot just let go without a fight. I know that Governor Murphy spent time talking about it this week as well and put out a statement for it. We've been all talking, staying on the same page, but we cannot afford to lose $85 million. Like, we cannot. Like,
It,
no.
it's, it seems like what the Trump administration has been doing and what Congress has been doing is setting up crisis after crisis that we react to. Is there a plan for Democrats and Democratic leadership to start offering their own budget, like their own vision for what it means to go forward against this, right? Because we seem to have a resegregation plan. We seem to have a plan that's just vehement on anything that deals with diversity, equity, or inclusion. So we know that they're against a multiracial democracy, and we know that they are literally saying multiracial democracy bad. We want to exclude people. We want to make it more difficult to vote. We want to even destroy the checks and balances that we have, because even if you pass the budget, right, like even if they say they're not going to cut certain things in the budget, based on what Doge has been doing, why does it even matter? Like, if Doge is legit, why does it even matter what they have in the budget? Because you know that at any moment he could just sign an executive order and then start cutting where they want to cut.
I mean, it matters because if it was okay, then we wouldn't have over 100 plus lawsuits, right? Like, people are suing, some folks making lots of victories in these lawsuits. I mean, and that is the bottom line. Like, what he is doing is unconstitutional on many fronts. Like, he can't dismantle or throw out government departments without Congress approval. Like, he can't dismantle the Department of Education without our approval, but he's trying to do so anyway. And that is why these different lawsuits out here exist, because he can't do it. I think the overall point of it as well is that elections have consequences. Like, That's a real thing. That's why when people are out here talking about, oh, my vote doesn't matter, I'm not going out, like, what does it matter? It matters. Like, this time and this period should show you why your vote matters and why you should not take your vote for granted. And this is the consequence. Donald Trump and this trifecta government is the consequence to voting, to not voting, for people who stayed home, for people who decided to vote for him because of the many different reasons they brought up, rather it was the economy or whatever they were talking about. This is the result that we have. And I think the pure point of it all is Democrats have limitations. It's only so much we can do when we are not in control of the House, the Senate, or the administration. And so we are, stuck in a place where we're like having to file lawsuits, when we are using different tools to like fight back and bring attention to what's happening and trying to mobilize people, because the power is still with the people. Like I said to you guys a week ago, like, people still have voices. We saw hands-off rallies happening all over this nation, hundreds of thousands and thousands of people speaking out mad as hell about what is going on. And they're going to continue to do that. And that is why we're using that as a tool too, to mobilize, and more importantly, focusing on 2026 so that we can win back the House and have some control in the House. And so we have, worked with the Democratic DCCC to focus on those races that we're able to win and those seats that we're able to flip, so that we can gain control of the House. But I think there's just a limitation to how much that we can do when they are in control of three sectors of our government.
I was even suggesting that even the push to say multiracial democracy is important. This is what we stand for as a Congress. You're for resegregation. This is what, like, if you want a voting bill, here's an alternative democratic voting bill, because this is the thing that's important, right? Like, because we know what they're doing. We know that they don't believe in a multiracial democracy. We know that they're doing everything possible to undermine that, so that on one hand, right, you have the white nationalists, the people who are scared, the white people who are scared that they're losing power and demographics. You have that, and a bunch of rich people who want to get even richer. And they're working together to really undermine, shake up the government that might have ramifications for years to come. Is there like is there a way that Democrats can have that answer to that white Christian nationalism, or that divisive separatist America that's small, and really affirm a multiracial democracy where we are looking out for all, where we can all actually benefit and not just a few?
I mean, personally, Jonathan, I already think that's happening. Like, I don't agree with the fact that we are living in a world where people of color or any folks other than white folks are benefiting more than white folks, or whatever we're trying to like paint this picture about that. I mean, at the end of the day, I just think it's not just about what you're talking about. I think that there are some people who are truly hateful, who are part of this administration, who are straight up racist, like,
Mhm.
and have a problem with history, have a problem with people of color, have a problem with wokeness, whatever that may be. All of these different terminologies that they're using, they have a problem with. And I think no matter how you word it, whatever fancy title you put on it, these folks are problematic because they are hateful, discriminative people. Like, and that is just the bottom line. And these are some people in leadership. These are people that
Mhm.
I walk the halls of Congress with. And no matter how you tax a word on it, they're going to be who they're going to be. Like, they come from generations of racism. So at the end of the day, like, this is what we're dealing with. Like, so to me, I think America is a place where everyone can thrive. I mean, I think we have to do better of it, but I think now, because we're heavily focused on populations that have not had the same opportunities as those, that may be Caucasian, now it's a problem. Like, now we have to go back and change the language of how we operate because they feel uncomfortable about it. And to me, I just feel like it's an unfair conversation and an excuse for the things that they're saying, like dismantle diversity, equity, inclusion, or we can't talk about history. We can't talk about slavery. To me, I just think it's an excuse that they're using right now for like what they're doing, and it's unnecessary. It's unhinged, and we should not be running a government like this. Donald Trump, at the end of the day, was elected. He got elected. He became the president. He is the president right now. And despite everything else, his number one goal as a president should be how he's working for everyone. He's not the president for Republicans. He's supposed to be the president for all of us. And he should be working together for everyone and bringing everyone into the fold on how we move America forward. Like he spent all that time talking about, hey, I'm going to be the peace. We're going to be peaceful. We're going to bring it all back together. He's done none of that. Like, I mean, I will work with anyone who is really dedicated to making the lives of the people I represent in New Jersey's 10th better, regardless if they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever. If it makes people's lives that I represent better, I'm down for it. But that is not happening. He is not trying to mobilize us all together or get on one accord or be unified. That is not happening right now. And that is the problem. Like they are literally focused on all of the wrong things. And every decision that he's made thus far has been not helpful to the people that I serve and not helpful to many people. No one's life has gotten better other than probably his billionaire friends and his millionaire friends since he's taken office at all.
Yeah, and I completely agree in terms of the level of racial vitriol, like trying to take both material things away from Black people, from targeting Black federal workers, right? Like it seems like there's a document with literal pictures of federal workers who they've targeted for to be taken out, to the symbolic, right? Like trying to take away Black history, to literally talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion as dirty words. Why? It seems like Black politicians can talk about race and talk about it often. It seems like many of the mainstream white politicians, reporters, etc., they shy away from it, even though it's in your face. And they're not having the actual conversation that really needs to be had, that this is a white nationalist government. They are pushing white nationalist policies. This is a blatant policy of resegregation. That is true in the Voting Act. That is true in trying to cut programs that actually help materially, like well, would help materially Black people, like scholarships or Pell Grants or things like that. Anything that it seems to be any type of material help or aid would be something that's targeted to be hit. Why isn't there a larger conversation that directly talks about the resegregation policies of the president and the way that he is stoking white fear and leaning on white fear of of a place where white people are like, oh, we don't have our country because we're being outnumbered, where they're going to replace us and replacement theory. Why isn't this much more mainstream in the way all of us are talking about it, and especially Democrats, white Democrats, who see it but don't see, but who talk about everything but.
Well, look, I can't speak to why they're not doing it. I think some people might just be frightened to do so. They don't feel comfortable with doing it. I mean, I just honestly don't think people want to say the obvious or the black and white part of it. I just don't think they feel comfortable in doing so, and they don't have enough courage to do so, even though they see what is exactly happening. It kind of brings me back to a conversation that we talked about and we continue to talk about to this day about Kamala Harris's campaign, right? And the folks who did not support her, who did not vote for her, which was largely, white people, but white females did not show out to the level that they expected, that they would come out for her. And that is problematic because at the end of the day, like there are a lot of white women who are Democrats who, might have not necessarily voted for her. And I think, that's an issue that we kind of, trickle with, right? About like, hey, what really happened in this election? Like, how did we get here? And I just think it's the same thing when you talk about what this president is doing. I mean, I will say that there are some colleagues of mine in Congress that do call it out, that do talk about what is happening right now and how this president and this administration, is creating policies that hurt people of color on purpose. And I think that they do say that, but I think it just needs to be a large conversation about it, because that is exactly what is happening. Every week we see a situation where this president is trying to, kind of like whitewash people of color, like, the rather it's history. I mean, last week we dealt with the situation with Harriet Tubman's page coming off of the National Parks website, and every week is something. This week we're dealing with the Smithsonian attacks on the African American Museum specifically. Like, I mean, you know how many Smithsonian museums are in Washington, D.C.? But this man is specifically targeting the African American Museum because he doesn't like the different history that they're talking about at the museum. Like, it's history. How do you not like that? Like, I mean, who are you to decide what you don't like? Like, in terms of what's happening at a museum, that is history. Like, these are facts. Like, and he doesn't want those stories told in the museum, but he chose the African American Museum to specifically like pick on. So, I mean, these are things that are like literally happening on purpose that this president is doing. And I think, more people definitely can use their platform to talk about it. But I mean, people have to get the courage to be able to do so and to tell the truth, speak truth to power. And everybody can't do that.
I think probably the most scary thing to me is that this is part of that it goes beyond Trump. This is a movement of millions of people that believe this, which is
Yeah.
why he has power. I remember reading an article in 2022 that talked about the people who were in January 6th, and overwhelmingly, the pattern of correlation between the people who were arrested on January 6th wasn't that they were from red states. It wasn't from that they were in Trump, even in Trump supporting districts. They were in districts where the percentage of the white population had decreased. And I think that even if we look at New Jersey is a state where the white population, in terms of percentage of the voting population, has decreased, which means that you have that same resentment, that same levels of movement that supported Trump and pushed him to power once and pushed him to power very much this second time, very present here in New Jersey. Is there when you're talking to other people in Congress, is there a thought not just about Trump, but the movement that pushes him forward?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of chatter about that, a lot of conversation about that, and trying to analyze these folks who follow Trump, who are fans of Trump, who would follow him to the end of the bridge. And if he jumped off, probably jump off too. I mean, definitely it has been a conversation about that and just trying to understand like how they got there, how this is happening, why these folks following him. I mean, yeah, people talk about it each and every day. To answer your question, I don't think we have a sincere answer on it or a psychological answer for it, but I mean, there are conversations happening around why people are following. I mean, some folks classify it as like kind of cult behavior. It, we've heard that many times before, but I mean, I just think we have more work to do around it, around why that he has such a large following, and why people are okay with this behavior, even though folks morally know it's wrong, or they wipe it out of their brain that it's not wrong. Like I sometimes watch these interviews online with Don Lemon. He's always stopping people who are fans. I don't know if you catch it, but it's he stops folks who are supporters of Donald Trump, and he asks them like literally questions like, hey, why do you support Trump? And then when the people say something and it's not factual, he's like, that's not true though, let me point out the facts for you. And the people are like, well, still, like, I like Donald Trump. Like, it's like you see him questioning these people and you're wondering why. So I think there's a lot more digging in that and understanding what the wave is of his following.
Or even the power that he's getting now from people who are just caving in, like liberal law firms caving
Yes.
in, universities caving in. I think that that seems almost like more dominoes falling. I,
I
the
will,
I,
I, will- I will say to those facts though, some of that stuff is like, it's people are scared. for some, I think like he's like really a big bully in some places, well, all the time, right? And I think some of these people, they feel scared. Some of those universities with their federal dollars on the line, they don't want to lose them. They're scared of that. I feel like it's a little bit of fear as well with some instances of these organizations and these institutions who are caving in.
Mm. And some fear, and sometimes part of it fear. The part that worries me even more is the ones that kind of agree, and we're looking for this as an excuse to do their resegregation policies, right? Like so, it's just is a landmine. I know that you only have half an hour. I want to respect your time, but please finish us off in terms of what is going on, what's on your mind, what else, what words do you want to leave us with?
So I just want to one encourage people to follow me on social media. I am on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter at Rep LaMonica. And the reason why I say this is one, so you can stay up to date and stay engaged of what is happening. But more importantly, this next 2 weeks, we're going to have multiple days of action where we are going to be mobilizing folks. We have days of action for Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and we want you to join in on the mobilization. We'll be making calls, writing letters, sending emails, especially to our Republican colleagues in Congress, getting them to understand that we will not back down in losing our funding for our services that we need here in our communities. And so definitely follow in so you can stay engaged and stay up to date on how you can get involved, and just stay, in the know of what is happening. So that is what I leave you with. I want to make sure that I leave folks with, with some type of hope and inspiration. And Jonathan and Baba, I am extremely, hopeful that some Republican colleagues, and we've seen some speaking out this week
Mhm.
about the things that Donald Trump is doing that is not right. We saw many of them speaking out this week about tariffs. And I believe that many of them will continue to come to light because they know that their constituents cannot take these cuts to their services that they benefit from. And so we need your help in doing that to make sure that we hold them accountable. And so definitely, like I said, follow me on social. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter so that you can stay in the know of everything. And as always, I'll continue to keep my folks updated and fight like hell because that is what I'm planning on doing for the people that I represent in New Jersey's 10th congressional district.
Thank you. Thank you again for being on, and we'll see you soon. And good luck, and be safe and be careful.
Thank you guys. See you later. Have a great weekend.
All right, you too. All right, so Baba Zaid, are you there? All right, so we have I just want to directly talk to this listener. He said, so when Obama did the same thing, cutting waste, it wasn't an issue. Trump is finding waste so our money doesn't go to something as useful as Sesame Street in Iraq. Biden sent money to Ukraine without congressional permission. The Democratic Party has to stop crying since Trump has been in office. You're inaccurate about a few things. The first thing you're inaccurate about is that the money that went to Ukraine has to be approved by Congress. Well, at least it was approved during the Biden administration. There were a lot of fights over it. Like literally, they had to flip leaders in the House, Republican leaders, to support the Ukraine. Even the current majority leader supported money for the war in Ukraine. So you're factually inaccurate. Even money that is discretionary, it gets approved by Congress. That was before Trump. The thing that is going on right now is he's cutting things that where Congress has approved money, and he's cutting those things. Obama never was able to, and Obama never did that because it seems to be actually unconstitutional, and that's why there are all these lawsuits except heading out. So Trump is pushing the limits of the federal government to do things that would usurp Congress. But because so the it is problematic because it is problematic. It's just factually you're just inaccurate on that. But we're getting ready to go to our next section.
I was able to get in there.
Zai, do you want to give us the introductions?
Yeah, we just the last time I had Rebecca and Chino on was when Governor Murphy did his first round of commutations. He just did another round. and did a commutation of some 93 persons' sentences. There's a big bite of an apple that some of us have been trying to get a movement on for a long time. And I just thought it was important to have some folks close to the action unpack what happened, why it's important, and what can we do to keep this kind of thing going. Because this dude, for all the good he's doing at this particular moment, is on his way out the door, right?
Hmm.
So what's going to happen with this motion around this particular space for some healing in the criminal justice system? What's going to become of this with whoever is next to occupy the state house? So just
And can
important
you
to
also give
understand.
us some, and can you give us some background in terms of what this program is? Like commutations, what are they? How do they work? And
I'm going to let
why
the
is this a
experts
thing
do that.
now?
I'm going to let the
Right.
experts do that. That's why I got Rebecca Uwakwe from the ACLU and my little brother who's been doing some very important work on the ground where all this is happening in live uh, time.
All right, Zaid, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so
Y'all
yes,
forgive me with
Rebecca,
that
Chino,
question.
break it
But
down for
Rebecca,
us. Let us
go
know.
ahead and break down the process and how we got to this bridge.
Yes.
Of
Rebecca,
course.
Queens first.
Hi, Baba. Hi, Chino. Hello, everyone. So my name is Rebecca Awakwe from the ACLU of New Jersey. And yes, I am so ecstatic and thrilled to see the governor exercising his clemency powers. But just to back up a little bit and really explain how we got here. So first off, so the governor has granted pardons and commutations, right? Specifically, 87 pardons and 6 commutations. Now, a pardon basically means forgiveness of your conviction, your criminal conviction. It is not the same as an expungement, but it basically restores your civil, it restores your full citizenship, essentially. So people who normally have criminal convictions face a lot of barriers with housing, with employment, with voting, as you can imagine. So, so a pardon restores citizenship rights. And in regards to commutations, commutations pretty much ends, it shortens or ends a sentence. So what we're seeing and what we've seen last December and just recently, this past week was Governor Murphy shortening the sentences of incarcerated individuals, namely 7 who are my clients, and so they were released from prison. And I mean, what this really means is that New Jersey has spoken and said that, you know, we care about second chances, we care about people. We can look past someone's worst mistake. We care about rehabilitation, right? We care about the whole human being, right? Not just what they were charged with. And of course, our project at the ACLU of New Jersey, we advocated for categorical clemency, which basically means like, look, we're not only just looking at the individual, we're looking at categories of injustices that normally happen in the criminal legal system. So our 2 categories are survivors of domestic violence and people impacted by extreme trial penalties. And so, which basically means they went to trial, they exercised their Sixth Amendment right to go to trial, they rejected a plea offer, and they were excessively sentenced as a result of that, meaning they got double, triple, sometimes even quadruple of what the prosecutor's original offer was. And so the governor, Governor Murphy, in his executive order, has also delineated other expedited categories. But that has pretty much been the essence of our project at the ACLU of New Jersey and the releases as well. So I think the impact is major. It also tells the community, especially minority community, especially the Black community, that there's hope. A lot of people have a lot of renewed hope right now, which is great. There are pending petitions, as you can imagine, and so people are really excited. And in this climate, we're grateful, very grateful.
Chino, you on the ground, right? And you've been through these paces in real time on your own walk personally, and with a whole lot of brothers and whatnot who you've done time with, right? And you know how harmful the ordeal of incarceration is, and how difficult it is to surmount those barriers as we come out, right? For the brothers, how's this looking? What's it mean? How can we build on this?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Rebecca, it's always a pleasure to be in the same space with you. Thank you for the work that you're doing and championing for our brothers and sisters who are, incarcerated behind the wall as a result of mass incarceration. But it's ironic, yesterday I went to Rawway and met Brother Barkley at the gate, who
Yes,
was
I
one
saw
of
it.
the recipients of the governor's commutation. And while I was driving, I was on the phone with another brother that has filed a petition for clemency, specifically to have his sentence commuted. Just giving them guidance, information, how to effectively pursue his clemency. But we're an organization that not only help our brothers and sisters coming home reacclimate successfully, but also give them information and empower them to make sure that their voices are being heard and that they are part of the process in changing a lot of these draconian laws. But yeah, I mean, Governor Murphy, and I applaud him for his leadership and his courage and his staff. While I was at Rawway, meeting brother Rajan Berkeley at the gate, Lacey was there. She works with the governor's office, so that spoke volume of the commitment that the governor has and the
Wow,
staff,
that's a mouthful.
to yeah, just to give people let them know, like we're not just doing this for political reasons. We're doing this because we believe in what we're doing, right?
I want
Black
to
and
stop you
brown
for a second.
community.
Let me stop you for
Yeah,
a
there, my
second.
brother.
I want to put a pin on what you just lifted up, right? I want folks to appreciate how you started returning citizens and meet them at the gate. How that started with just y'all coming home with y'all hearts and trying to figure out what's next, and how it got to a place where someone from the governor's office is joining you now as you actually bring somebody home. That's a serious mountain to climb. I just want you to unpack that a little bit for everybody, for those who don't really know how that works or how that went down.
Yeah, but really quick, right?
I'm very proud of this. Let me just, I'm very proud. I remember the day I met this brother. I remember the very day I met this brother, right? Just coming home, right? Humble, grateful, and whatnot. And God,
Zaid, I think you popped out
that has
again.
now become, a real resource for a lot of lives. I just wanted to just put a pin in that. And now, for y'all, forgive my connection. It's something I've been struggling with for about a month and a half. I don't know what the hell to do with it anymore.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons, Brother Zaid, that I started the Returning Citizen Support Group was that when I was in prison, I served 3 decades in prison. When I was in prison, I saw brothers that I grew up in the prison system with come in and out, in and out. They would go out for 6 months, come back, not once or twice, but 3, 4, 5 times. And I'd be like, wow, like, why you keep coming back? I'm trying to get out there, and you keep coming back. And the brothers would be like, yo, Chino, it's hard out there. And I'd be like, bro, it can't be harder than here. So when I came home on September 23rd of 2016, with the support from my family who supported me for 30 years, who were waiting for me outside when I came home, that question that I asked brothers when they came back was answered for me, right? Society marginalizes, they stigmatize us. We got all kind of obstacles and challenges that we're facing, and people, um, they treat you a certain way, but as soon as they find out that you have a criminal conviction, that changes everything. So, I founded the Returning Citizen Support Group in collaboration with my co-founders, which is one of my brother, Carmelo Ortiz, and Tariq Witcher, so that we can create a space for men and women that are coming home to get the help that they need to be successful, right? Having come home and gone through other reentry organizations and seeing the exploitation of our trauma by people that were supposed to be helping us. I said, we got to start something that is biased, like food before us bias. Um, and we've been building partnerships with the ACLU, Rutgers University Legal Clinic, Laura Cohen, with NYU, Alexis, with Seton Hall, and with different institutions and organizations in the community to to push back and dismantle these systems that oppresses our people, and to make sure that when brothers and sisters come home, that they are successful, that they're giving a real chance to be successful. But of course, one of our biggest challenges is housing, and it continues to be one of our biggest challenges. But that is what gave birth to the Returning Citizen Support Group. And now we have, on a weekly basis, 40 to 50 people that attend our support group on Thursdays, families, mothers, wives, grandmothers, and, we support them. We support the brothers and sisters, and we support their families.
Mhm. That's right in real time. That's right in real time. That's right in real time. Now, this the sticky question. The terrain is shifting. I want to put a pin in the fact that and ACLU is one of the co-sponsors on the ground. Next next Wednesday is a social justice gubernatorial forum at NJPAC. I want everybody to sign up for that, attend, ask the question in the registration process. What's that social burning social question, social justice question that you want whoever the next governor is going to be to be ready to address and be unapologetic about it, right? ACLU is one of those partners, right? What vibration are
So I think it's uh, you just cut out a little bit.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think you're
yeah,
asking
yeah. I'll
what are
call
those?
you back
What
into
should
that.
people ask for in that registration process? Zayed, are you there? Was
Yeah,
that your
can y'all
question?
hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no,
I,
no,
I
folks.
mean,
Go ahead, Chino. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
You
for me, right? I want to know because like you stated, right, brother Zayed, once Governor Murphy leaves office, right? Um, all the progress that we've made, if the wrong governor gets into office, can change that, take us back 10, 15, 20 years. So one of the questions that I want to know is, what have they done? These people that are running for governor, what is their track record? What have they done around social justice and to dismantle systems like mass incarceration, Jim Crow laws? What is their record? What have they done? Right? And I can say proudly for our mayor, Ras Baraka, that he has a track record. He has created a platform and he is empowering returning citizens to be part of the community because we are part of the community. So my question would definitely be to the candidates, what's your track record around social justice?
That's it. And Jonathan, I thank you for and Fisa, thank you for lifting up what that looks like when you go to it online. I would tell folks to register right away, even though it's going to be at a big space that is NJ Packet is likely to get filled up rather quickly because we do have quite this is a heavy election. It's a heavy field of candidates. It's a very pivotal time. So folks should sign up and really get that work in and ask those questions. Um,
That's a good form.
yeah, it is. It is.
Great
And we're
moderator.
looking forward to it. And later on, we're talking about another forum that's comparable. Uh, that's be coming up on the 26th when we talk to Lawrence Ham, right? But let's on the ground now. I mean, how are y'all seeing? What's the vibration on the ground in this particular space? The governor's election didn't happen yet, but the national election did happen. The person who's been put over the U.S. Attorney's office is night and day from anything we have seen in a long time, right? Very market hostility. We have a very contentious case, really sad case. And then, that a young man, and I'm calling him a young man, he was 14 years old, right? Finds himself being bum rushed by uh, masked, armed law enforcement folks, not knowing that they were law enforcement folks, and has something because that's what he was facing on the streets, and wound up taking out a new officer. And this new U.S. attorney is talking about, let's get him in federal court, let's waive him up, let's do away with the law that says somebody that's under 15 should not be tried as an adult, right? Let's dally the question of a death penalty. We
Right.
don't have the death penalty in New Jersey, the state, but the feds do have the death penalty.
And especially for a 14-year-old, right? Uh,
Yes. So that's
like
the
when someone is
climate
that
that we're
young,
in. So I just
like
want
when
to
some,
just
right.
just raise, the value of what happened and why it's important for us to continue to push and fight for those spaces where we have made this ground, but to be very clear about what it is that we're up against as we do that. And either one of y'all can chime in.
Wait, can I just also say something really quickly about that? And
You're
just to
welcome,
like,
Asian.
yes, thank you, Zai. Thank you all. I appreciate being here. All politics are local. And so, Zai, what you mentioned about the recent case with the 14-year-old boy shooting the police officer, it truly is a very all around sad situation that the community is still hurt by. And there's, depending on who you talk to, there's a right, there's a wrong. At the end of the day, the community is heartbroken. We have lost, though. The police officer was one of my mom's former students at Miller Street School in the South Ward. Um, and that was one of her babies. That was one of the Miller Street babies. The Miller Street is no longer there as a school. It's a homeless shelter, to my understanding. But we lost a member of our community, we lost a baby. And also at the same strength, we lost that 14-year-old child too, because now he's in the hands of the incarceration system. And so just wanted to just give that more light that the community, and I'm not saying no one's feeling this way. Just wanted to just put that more of that stamp on it, that the community is still hurting,
Yes.
that this is all around lost, and that people are hurting and people are trying to make sense of what all this means, because justice justice has to be justice, and at the same time, what does justice mean, right? And what does it mean for different families? What does it mean for the community? What does it mean for different parts of our community? um, and it's one of those things where you wish you had the right answer, and we hope that we have people in power to help navigate through those right answers, and not this is not a clear this is the solution, this is what needs to be happen, because we're all still navigating that, and we're all still navigating through that with hurt, because I'm hurt, my neighbors are hurt, every families are hurt, communities are still hurt by this, and so we're navigating through this with hurt. And so I just wanted to just put that out there too.
No, excellent. And on
That officer's
that
only
line,
25. They're both two young people, right?
right.
And
And,
both of their families. It's a lot. It's a lot.
and I think that even deal with how the state, with how federal law enforcement is starting to deal with this, it doesn't really deal with the sensitivity that's in the community on all ways. Because when a tragedy like this happens and you have a 14-year-old there, if the person's 14, then everyone is like, we are all to some extent responsible for this. This is not just an individual action of a 14-year-old. There are so many things that went wrong to get to that point. There are so many institutions that failed him to get to that point. So I understand the horrible bravado of wanting to be like, oh, law and order on a 14-year-old, like that would actually solve deeper problems within our community that are highlighted by this. And this is, and to Mayor Baraka's credit, this was a unified city in grief for both the victim of the shooting and and in grief for the person who actually did it, who destroyed their life, right? Because two lives were lost, and two lives were lost tragically. And it seems like, especially when you're dealing with something like a 14-year-old with a gun, there are a whole lot of things that go systemically wrong. There are a whole lot of adults that failed a kid, which is why you even have uh, the different levels of understanding of the need for juvenile law and juvenile justice to take place.
Amen. And I've always, and we're kind of like getting derailed, and so I just, well, not derailed, but pivoting to something else. The idea of, so like when you say incarceration, and the point of incarceration is to rehabilitate. I always like take issue with the term of rehabilitating when it comes to youth, because they haven't been, whether it's the word or not, they haven't been habilitated. Like, you're a child, like your brain has not even been fully developed. I think like your brain doesn't get developed until, like fully developed until at least your 20s, whether it be your early 20s or your mid 20s. And so the idea
That's
of,
important to take into consideration. And
yeah,
that
and
often is not in the narration of these cases when they're handled, and in the press and in the courts, and then in the prosecutorial and carceral side of this thing. Go ahead.
yeah. And so, but like this idea to incarcerate a child, because incarceration is to rehabilitate, because that person is somehow not fit to be in society for X, Y, and Z. And so there's sent to prison to be corrected. But how can you correct something that hasn't been fully formed or fully developed? And so again, don't want to like go down this type of rabbit hole, because it's true, like we could do like a whole segment or like a 4-hour segment on this alone. But I don't want to like pivot back to the original question. Given this governor's race, the primaries coming up in June, what are the questions that, and Chino, you spoke it to life of just how so much has happened over the last few years, and given the right or wrong governor, all that can either be stable, it can disappear, it can be decimated, or it can be built upon. And so, or Rebecca, if you want to like chime in too, of just like, what are these type of questions versus like, do you like this? Do you like what we're doing? Like, what are these other questions that one should be thinking of and considering when listening to these candidates?
Yeah, so you all have made amazing points, and and of course, this is a tragedy. And when I think about this, just more on a communal level, I think about fear being the center of a lot of these interactions. When you think about the community, civilians, and police officers, and it goes both ways. It goes both ways, right?
Definitely
And
doing this one.
yeah, right. And usually, when someone tragically dies, a lot of what is being centered, the emotion that's being centered, is fear. And as a community, how do we address that, right? Because with what has happened, we should also be looking forward to what we can do to address it as a community, the discussions we need to have. There are so many good points mentioned about just what is justice and what is the purpose of punishment. And there are different theories of punishment. And one of the theories is rehabilitation. Another one is retribution, where they say, well, an eye for an eye. Another one is an incapacitation, which has been used a lot when you think about excessive and extreme sentencing, when you think about the when you think about the stereotypes given to Black youth, when you think about debunked theories like the super predator theory, things that but were initially there to say, we have to lock them up. It's essentially the lock them up theory of punishment that says, this person is incorrigible, this person is not capable of rehabilitation. And so we have to lock them up. And unfortunately, that is what we're facing right now. And I think a good question to ask candidates is, what is your theory of punishment? Do you believe that people could be rehabilitated, or do you believe in incapacitation or retribution, or just other, if someone does commit a crime, what theory of punishment, do you believe in? I would want to know that, because then that just tells me, where they're thinking. It tells me, are you thinking about brain development? Are you thinking about community? Are you thinking about other factors that could play a role here? Or are you just thinking about fear mongering? Are you just thinking about the worst case scenario? Are you just thinking about racial profiling? Are you just thinking about stereotyping? Things like that.
I love that question. Go ahead. What other questions? Let me write them down. What else? That's a great question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and Chino, what would you have to say about that?
Can you hear us? Chino,
Hello?
can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
He's
No, we
muted.
can't
He's
hear
muted. You're muted,
you.
Chino. He's in his car trying to get unmuted.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's figuring it
I know
out.
we got something to say on
Okay.
that.
Nope, we still don't hear you.
All right. If you go out and come back in, you
Yeah.
might. Yeah, if you go out and come back in, you might be able to. It might fix itself.
Yeah. And so thank you, Rebecca, again for that question, because that gets to the bigger. Sometimes we want to know stuff, we don't know how to ask it. And so for you to be able to give us language on the information that we're seeking is truly powerful. And even the idea of restorative justice as well. And so, which I think our communities, we practice that no matter what faith that you belong to, we're Christian, Muslims, we forgive, how to make the person whole again. And then I just think back of what they've done in South Africa, post-apartheid, and the decision to either, hey, we're going to criminalize everyone who participated in the acts of apartheid, but the country decided not to do that because they felt as though it would just that circle, that cycle of the perpetuation. Oh, Chino's back, and we hear some sounds coming from him.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, I mean, I was saying that that it is a double tragedy. A young officer lost his life, and a young man who's a baby to me, 14 years old, who destroyed his life. But unfortunately, society, you know, a lot of politicians play on the fear of the community, and they take opportunities like this to push their agendas to continue mass incarceration and incarcerate younger Black uh, men, rather than take this tragedy and say, you know what, as a community, let's have a candid conversation, right? Because the truth is, there is no rehabilitation in our criminal justice system, right? So, one of the things that is also missing is a restorative justice component to our criminal justice system. So, we believe that our criminal justice systems need to be dismantled and repurposed, because they're not, as we've seen, with our president who's a criminal, right? Um, didn't spend a day in jail. He pardoned everybody that was involved in that resurrection in DC, right? But that shows the true system that exists in this country, right? But I don't think that this young man should be waived up as an adult, right? Because he's not allowed to buy alcohol. He's not allowed to possess a weapon. He's not allowed to buy tobacco products. But yet he can be tried as an adult. Um, and I'm currently on the panel with the Human Rights Watch, uh, Rutgers Legal Clinic, ACLU, and other community partners, and we are um, strategizing on how to stop and to reverse, these waivers of our young children, our babies, into the adult system, right? Because the scientific evidence has always been there, right?
Right.
That the brain is not fully developed until people reach the age of 27, right? And I've been working collaboratively with the Office of the Public Defender, ACLU, and
I was going
testifying
to
on
bring that up.
behalf, yeah,
And
testifying on behalf of men on men that were waived up as juveniles, 14, 15, right, during these coma hearings. And we've been successful in having them released. But, like, where's the redemption? You know what I mean? As a society, do we believe in redemption, right? Because we are redeemable. And I think that, this tragedy, and that goes to the question tonight. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like Rebecca, pointed out, like what's your position around this issue, right? Because we can't keep, locking up our children when and you're not addressing the social issues that exist in our society.
Amen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And
I'm
I know that.
looking forward to having, and I want you to respond to this too. And I know we're up against the clock too, but just quickly.
But I was going to say we I know we're up against the clock and we already have our next guest as well. So I know we're coming to the end of this segment, but I know you want to get another question in. So get that other question in, and because I know that this is actually a really important segment as well, and we've got to get both of you back to
Yeah,
talk a lot more extensively about these issues as well.
yeah, and it's more or less a place to go than a real question in the interest of time. But one of the things that we're also trying to see built out on the state side, on the defense side, is a public defender's office.
All right. So I know that we're coming to an end of the section, and I think that I'm
Mhm.
going to ask something that or a statement that might go into what uh, Baba might have been saying, right? Or thinking about. I'm a teacher. I'm a debate coach. One of the debates that we have with our students in the fourth marking period, the debate topic is prisoners in the United States. Prisoners ought to have the right to vote. And the reason why that becomes the topic is because I think that there's a way in which we see people who are incarcerated in the same way we see people who are not incarcerated in terms of Black people, right? We are disproportionately targeted, our communities are disproportionately affected. And I think that there's a long history going back from slavery of how our community gets targeted and how we are dehumanized before we are in prisons, which is often the reason why we end up in those prisons. They even create laws that target us because it's not the behaviors that are criminal; it's the people that are criminal. And
Mhm.
and you see this especially true with drug policy and the drug policies that have filled our prisons up in the last few years, where white
Fill
people
our
do
streets up
drugs
with
in a
guns.
lot more right. Well, white people do drugs in a lot greater time, right? And they do not get those sentences. You see even the relationship with guns in different parts of the country. And it's complicated, right? It's not simple, but we see there's a level of criminalization that's a lot easier for people within our own community. Um, I think that with that spirit, I'm going to give both of you the last words on that in terms of where do you see us going from here? And we definitely want to get you back.
Rebecca?
Okay, that was so loaded. I have so much to say to that, but of course, I mean, all of it is 100% true. For the Black race, there has been no separation of crime and race. It's been intermingled, intertwined, and other races, usually non-minority races, predominantly white, they've been given the benefit of the doubt in the criminal legal system. And so a lot of it does stem from, a lot of it stems from slavery. A lot of it stems from Jim Crow, all of it. I think the first step is just acknowledging that that is true. I think that we are in a battle between what history is and what it's not. I think that there's a fight to, erase history as we know. And so I think the more we speak about it, that's how we're going to get people to continue to be aware. And then that's the only way we can begin to have real change.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and it's really quick because I know the time is against us, but I always tell people that we have a very critical election coming up in the state of New Jersey, especially in light of the last election for the presidency. We can't control that narrative to a certain degree, but we can't control what goes on in our state. Newark is leading and being an example for the whole nation, but we have to get out, we have to vote, and we have to make sure that we put the right governor in office.
As you want to take it out with the ritual question and we transition?
I just so appreciate how you guys just let me take ownership of this question when I'm here. And so thank you both for being a guest here on All Politics Are Local. Thank you for your wisdom, your insight, your perception, perspective. We appreciate it. Our viewers, our listeners, etc. And so before we let you both go, please, this is true to All Politics Are Local. And so if you both can name your favorite rap artist, rap group, or favorite rap song. I love the reactions because everyone's like, ooh.
My favorite rapper is Tupac. And
Period.
one of my favorite songs from Tupac is Dear Mama.
That's right.
Aww.
Love that.
Most famous cover of the Black Panther Party, by the way. I got to say that.
Amen.
And an amazing documentary. If you haven't seen the documentary about Tupac and his mom, Afeni Shakur, you got to see it.
Amen. Rebecca, you're the one with this facial expression.
I'm the one with the facial expression because I love hip hop. Yes, I do. I'm a fan of Tupac, but I am so into Afro beats and everything. And
It works, baby. It works.
I will admit I love old school hip hop. Different, things have changed. But
honestly, you're in good company. You're more than in good company. And so speak your truth. Your truth.
So I will drop an Afrobeat song, which does have a TikTok dance, so you guys probably know it. It's called Soweto, Soweto, and it's by Victini. And okay, Zaid, you look like you know it.
No, well, I'll explain. Finish it.
Okay. And I just I'm also Haitian Jamaican, so I blame my parents for not
You blame. You don't blame, you claim, child.
Don't blame, claim. I love that, right?
So I'm all about, I really do believe in energy, vibrations, all of it. Like we have, I think, just historically, and we just have very good energy, and we bring that whenever we're together. And whether it's through spoken word, whether it's through music, I love dancing, so I just feel the energy, and so I like music that makes me feel the energy. And so to that extent, I'll stop talking because I know we're right.
Cool. I've been to Fela, the father of so-called Afro-pop. But when I got excited, Pac was born on June 16th. Several years after his birth, on June 16th, is the Soweto uprising.
Oh,
you can't make this stuff up.
Wow.
Can't make this stuff up, right?
That's
I know that.
I knew you were going to add something to that. I knew you were going to say something. They were like, whoa.
Wow.
His mother coming out of handcuffs, defending herself in the New York 21 case, right?
Great documentary.
Just exonerated. That's how that boy was born.
Wow.
Talk about an immaculate conception. We got our own
If you have
story.
not seen the Hulu documentary, you've got to see it. And it's important
Definitely.
the documentaries get made. As I said before, I'm a teacher, and when I showed the documentary last year, it was like, oh, you're familiar with Tupac, right? You're familiar with Tupac, and it was like, yeah, he was yeah, that's some old guy who used to rap.
Mhm.
We
That's
got
so crazy.
that's wild.
That's crazy.
Ugh,
Wow.
And
yeah.
He's one of our babies. He's a baby
That's
to
some old
me
guy who used to
still,
rap. Yeah, right.
they're
Right.
going to keep going if we allow them. And so I'm going to
Yes.
say we're going to wrap it up. Thank you both for being here. And Mr. Darryl Dwayne, he is graced us with his presence. Again, Rebecca, Chino, we appreciate you.
Thank you
And
for having
Thank you
me.
they're
for thank you for
definitely
having
going to
us.
have you
Thank you.
guys
Be in
come
touch. Be in
back.
touch.
Yeah.
Thank
Care,
you.
guys.
Yeah. Take
All
care.
politics are local. Peace.
Amen. So, Darryl, thank you so much for being here. So Darryl is the manager of the community engagement for the Newark Museum of Arts, and I met him. I would say like maybe like over a year ago. So how we met was at a community speaking event at Newark Museum. And I'm a fan of the museum. Born and raised in Newark. My mom, she loves the museum. Went there all the time while growing up. And so whenever the Newark Museum is having events and I can go, I'm going. And the events are everything. And I feel as though they're different from what I was growing up. The community aspect of it, the variety of programming, the variety of what's offered. And so, and I kind of, I don't know if I should be attributing it to you. I don't know, but I appreciate it. And so tell us what's going on. Where are you from? Your background? Because yeah, the Newark Museum is like it's the happening. It's the place to be. It's everything.
Well, I'm gonna say first and foremost, thank you for having me on the show. I definitely appreciate the invite, and thank you for the kind words. I would have to say we have to give Progress the round of applause for what you see happening right now, because the cultural progress that we made as a people, I think, is the only reason you're seeing um, the change. Did I freeze?
Wait 1 second. Just see me. Is it just me on the screen right now, or do you guys see
Yeah,
you?
I just see you on the screen.
Okay, not too sure. Okay, good. Cause like I'm cute and all, but come on, he's way more fabulous than I am. And he got the background, I got the breaks. He got the art. Like, so yes, I just wanted to like just say that. So again, continue.
Yeah, no. I was just saying we have to definitely give the big props to the culture, like to all of our aunties and uncles who were on the front lines, like advocating for visibility in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s and beyond. I think that's the reason you've seen the shift in the
Okay.
programming that you see at the museum.
Okay.
It's gone through a lot of different iterations since you were there as a youth to even now as an adult. And just even in my short stint, I've been with the museum now for about 13 years. And in that
Okay.
13-year window, I've seen change happen, progressive change happen that has opened up or allowed for a predominantly Black city to really shine as that in this space, which for me, I think speaks volumes because the museum historically, even before it probably knew what it was doing, and I say
Yeah.
this because of the founder's vision. The founder essentially wanted to do what other museums weren't, and that was to make modern day culture matter just as much as historical culture, along with aligning this idea that everything around us is art and is connected to art.
Yes.
Thought process allowed us to be able to push forward and be able to really do what we're doing today. So this is why you see a lot of the cool programming you see. And then just to toot our own horn, a lot of museums followed or modeled our how we do business, which would include the MoMA in the city. So we think about the MoMA and other New York City museums that are.
Wait, pause. Yeah, you have it. You got a lot, and I just want to. I'm here to direct it, and so
Nerd, it's showing things.
I want it. Oh no, you're not nervous. You are on the roll.
You
I
rolling.
just
Yeah,
feel
you
as
on the
though
roll,
we
son.
are. I just want to get more, like more, and so a little bit more about you. So you say you've been with the museum for 13 years, and the work that you're doing, and we're going to get more into that. you're very intentional. You're very intentional with the programming. You're very intentional about who you're partnering with. You're intentional about with the times, and you're not just saying like, oh, back in my day, this is what I did. I'm just giving an example. I don't even know like if back in your day was back in your day. This might be your back in the day right now. And so can you just give us like your background? Because what you're able to do is not something that someone can just do off the rip. And so how did you get to this point?
Sure. My story background wise is very interesting. I come from Norfolk, Virginia, which is very similar to Newark. So if you ever look at my social media, it says Norfolk to Newark, and that's that's very intentional. Norfolk is a predominantly a black brown city that resides in Virginia that has faced a lot of similar socioeconomic problems, similar to the city of Newark. So growing up in a space like that, I think helped to sort of preset how I view politics, how I view the art world, how I view the world. And then both of my parents are from Birmingham, Alabama. So military brat. And I spent school year in my school tenure in Virginia, but then always shipped back to Alabama, to Birmingham. During, whenever there was a school break, because there was vacation was going to go see family. So I say that to say I got a good portion of both. And then I had a lot of family members, specifically my uncle, who was a part of the civil rights movement, who marched with John Lewis, who was there on Sunday. So I think all of those things sort of help shape how I view the world and how I see myself in that world.
And that's necessary. And it's a teacher in me, but in general, I think it's important to know that context, because when we understand the context of people, then we understand why they show up in the spaces the way that they do. And so I kind of use All Politics Are Local to get like, hey, I want to learn more about you. I'm going to put you on the radio so I can ask you all these questions. And so that's amazing, right? And then you made your way north.
So the arts were always at the heart of what I wanted to do, right? So I think growing up in the household that I did, it was more of like, how can I expound upon that? And so I had one part of me that's like, I'm a performer. I'm built for the stage. That's what I'm going to do. And so I'm moving to New York, and I'm going to pursue that full-heartedly.
Yes, you are. Oh, if you guys do not follow him, if you guys do not go to the Newark Museum to see his aesthetics and just to see his presence, it is contagious. Like, I want it for me. So you are so right. You are a performer. You are that person. You're that guy. You're that guy.
I appreciate that, but yeah, I wanted to do the arts, and so I moved to the North essentially to chase after the performing aspect of the arts. Even though, which is why you always got to listen to your parents, especially Black women, because my mom always knew. But my mom
say that again. What did you say?
Got Black women, because like my mom, she was on top of it. She was like, "What we're going to do is I know you want to, pursue dance and acting as a main career, but you need to put some school behind that." And so I ultimately did, college, went to school, finished up at Norfolk State University. So big shout out to all the HBCUs. And then taught at Hampton University for a short tenure through their fine arts department, working under.
You taught. You're a professor at Hampton. I don't want to say
not a professor, but a contract educator.
Okay.
Worked in conjunction with the professors at Hampton U, and I did that for 7 years, helping them put together their Broadway style theater productions for their performing arts students. And so I think that paired with my actual touring experience, I got to tour with Monica, R&B megastar from the 90s into the early 2000s back in the day.
You don't gotta tell us who Monica is.
I got to work with some other pretty amazing people as I was pursuing the dance part of what my dream was. And it sort of stalled for, I was doing all these things, and then it stalled. And so I had to make a decision, and I was like, I'm not going to make it happen here in Virginia, commuting to all these places, to auditions. The only way that happened is if I made that move to the North. So I moved here, not expecting to fall in love with the Newark Museum of Art. I knew I was going to be living in Newark. I knew Newark was where I wanted to be, because I'm like, I need a city that feels like where I'm from.
Yeah.
That's close enough to the city that will allow me to be able to do what I need to do. And so, in moving to Newark, the museum was then put on my radar. And I actually approached the museum just kind of looking for a job in general, not necessarily a job in the arts, because I was.
You're bold. That's bold. You said like so.
Lucky too.
And yes, a lot of it is luck, God. That's why I give it all to God, because I went there looking for a job. I applied for a security job, just so we're clear. So y'all get really impressed of how I got started at the museum. I applied for a security job because I just got to Newark, so I was just looking for work. And I was currently that same week the museum hit me back. I had auditions that week, but I also had interviewed with like Hilfiger and a few other like companies in the city, because my degrees in fashion marketing with a focus in fine arts with a focus in fashion marketing. And so I was trying to work at a fashion house. I was like, I went to school for this. This is what my schooling is. Even though I want to do performing arts, if I got to make money, let me make money.
Yeah.
Went to the museum as a security guard, or tried to get into the museum as a security guard. Their HR department was on point and saw my resume and all this experience, and basically asked if I would be interested in doing a contract summer gig that started.
At God.
And then it snowballed from there. So 13 years later, we're here. But, and I feel like that story is super long. But again, I went in for an interview for a security guard, thinking I was a security guard. The interview turned out to be for a contract museum educator, from contract educator to getting a full-time offer to be a contract. Well, my contract got extended to year round. Then that got extended to a invitation to be a part of the full-time staff as a educator. My focus was still performing arts, so I was still choreographing, still doing these amazing things with the youth there. And then from there, I was able to become coordinator of community engagement, and now where I'm at now is manager of community engagement. So it's been a journey, but yeah. That's the background. I know people
about a journey. Oh, that story is like one of those stories that I hope you are able to share it to and through, because people are just always afraid of their own shadows type of deal. And here you are, just like, first of all, you're bold enough just to be knocking on someone's door asking for a job, right? And then the job that you were seeking, look at God, where they were like, they felt as though you were the blessing. Like, he wants to work here. No. We have something else for you. And so like that boldness still goes far, and let God plan it out. And so that's a beautiful journey. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think it could be longer, but I think you did a really good job condensing it the way that you did. So thank you.
Look, sorry. I'm a believer that your gifts make room for you. So I do think that's why we have to show up as our full selves whenever we walk into a space, because your gifts will make room for you.
Amen. Because you don't know, you might be that person that gives that other person that push. Like, you don't know that. And so God bless. I love that. And so now you're at the museum, and you were kind of going more into the museum space and the work that they're doing. And so going back to our previous segment around social justice, etc. So art is a form of social justice, right? It's a mechanism that we utilize, especially us Black folks. We utilize it to our benefit, to get the message out, to let it resonate. And I feel as though the work that you're doing at the museum is that. I feel as though when people, I read something very recently, I can't pinpoint it, but it was people are silent. People are not saying anything. These are happening around us in the administration, the federal level, the state level, et cetera. Things are happening, and no one, everyone is silent. And for me, I'm just are you not listening? Or do you not see what's going on in terms of the things that people are doing? Are people necessarily on a blowhorn, on a mic, on someone's stage saying this is wrong? Show it. And how I grew up, you show resistance doing the work. You do the work. That is how you resist. You want to resist? Become a teacher. Teach kids how to read, how to write, how to do math. You want to resist? Become a lawyer. Right? Help the people in the courthouse. Help the people understand what's their rights for landlord tenants. Right? That's how you resist. You want to resist? Go work at the Newark Museum. Go put on some programming. So can you, and not to say not to project how I'm feeling onto you about you feeling like I'm saying you're utilizing the museum as this form of resistance. That's what I'm naming it. But can you just speak to that? Can you speak to how in the last, I can't name however many years, how the museum has been utilizing its space as a way, as a form of resistance? And if you can push back on me using that terminology, but that's just how I see it. But can you just go into that?
Yeah. First off, thank you for all the kind words you said about the museum. I mean, I don't necessarily. So museums typically are bipartisan, right?
Yeah, of course.
I think we stand on what you're experiencing, which is what makes art so uniquely amazing, right? So whenever there is a wave of oppression historically, you typically see the art scene speak up, right? Because I feel like art is one of the one spaces where you can try to document what's happening in real time, and um, people are going to react to how they react. But because art is so subjective, it is a space where it can exist and not necessarily be brought into foolishness of politics and/or I want to say foolishness. That's the wrong word, but the sordidness of politics and political parties. However, to your point about resistance, and taking off my museum hat for a minute, and just speaking candidly from my lens, I think being just a Black person in America by default, or a person of color in general, but more so a Black person in America, you are by design resisting by existing, right? I think as much as we like to want to say we want to escape politics, everything about a Black person is political. So there's no way to disconnect one from the other. And so what you may be feeling in our programming is that connection, right? Because while the majority of the folks who are not people of color may be unaware of, what we are very aware of is that everything about us is political. And we know that because the laws that are in place since before Jim Crow, we go back to slavery, all those laws directly impacted how we moved, what we purchased. And so I say all those things to say that art only shows, just like hip hop music as well. When I came into the top half of the conversation, it only laminates or speaks about what's happening, right? So when you're in an art museum, if that museum is doing its job correctly, it should be a mirror. It should be, when you're walking into that space, no matter what time, what era, what century you're living in, as humans, you should be able to look at the works on the walls and be able to make that connection and see yourself in modern times and how you relate to those works. And so I say that to say, while a lot of the programming we do is very intentional, because again, we have a demographic we have to service as well, and our primary audience is us. And so in order to speak to us, you have to bring programs that are going to acknowledge who we are holistically. Doing that, I think that's the energy, the vibe, the power of resistance that you feel, because we are doing it in a way that I think other museums are still trying to catch up, if that makes sense. There's this wave that happened when we had Obama in office, that a lot of museums and art spaces and other institutions saw the need at that point for there to be more representation, right? More representation across the board, because history is often whitewashed based upon whoever the winners are, right? So in that thought process, you see museums trying to play catch up. One thing that I can kind of pride ourselves on here at the Newark Museum of Art is that we never had to play a catch up game. Our founder, and this is why I go back to the idea that our founder historically saw art in everything and everywhere. So our founder was, our museum's history was one of the first spaces to collect works and items from African and indigenous folks that were donated, not necessarily taken. And I think that's underscore as well, that were donated to our collection. And the fact that a museum back when that wasn't popular saw that was needed, I think that speaks more largely to the idea that we all are people, and there's connectivity in everything that we do, whether you can relate to that culture or whether it's a culture that you would like to learn more about, and can make those human connections. So I just hope moving forward that's more that energy, that resistance, what you're feeling is what our audience feels, as I do think things may get worse before they get better. And I think art is going to be a place of solace for a lot of folks. And in some cases, a place of disruption. And that's what art should do. It should cause you to talk. Art is supposed to be there to make you have conversation and dialogue.
Yes. And so,
Rockaville, you're definitely going to do some interrupting here, but let's, speaking of the new climate,
yeah,
how has the anti-DEI vibration and all of its impacts, how has it hit the museum so far, and what are you concerned about other shortcomings and resources that are key to what you do?
I would say the biggest thing we're most concerned about is funding. As you know, most museums are funded by outside spaces, including the federal government and our state institutions. So I think the funding piece is going to be the biggest part, especially with this past, I think, week, or maybe it was a week before last, with IMLS, shutting down, or temporarily on pause, I should say. That directly impacted a lot of museums, especially smaller museums who depended on that funding and keeping their doors open. I will say that one thing that I can kind of pride the community of Newark on being first, and just the community of people of being just a Black man in America, we have typically been able to do a lot with a little. In the face of all of what's happening, obviously our budgets have been directly impacted as well. As some of those grants we were looking to get, we may not be able to access because everything's sort of on pause in this current climate, right? And with those things being on pause, having to work with a lot less capital to produce the amazing programs that you spoke to, but this is why I often work with community partners because it's never really been about how much money we're given to make a thing happen, but how much community can show up and represent in spite of the limited, resources. And so I say that to say, while we are being, all museums are being impacted in this space in this moment, we're doing our best to be able to maintain what we've been doing. And we're going to need you, individuals like yourselves, to be able to lean into to continue to present amazing programming. That means tapping in artists who are going to be like, we don't have this in our budget to be able to pay you what you're worth, but are you willing to, and seeing the greater good and being able to give up that time and make space to show up so that, you can inspire the next generation of artists that will be able to hopefully take on the mantle and lead us into something lighter and brighter in the future.
Yes.
Been there and done that, son. You have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm from that 70s, 80s era, and we were doing all of that, in some other darkness.
He's one of those uncles you was talking about earlier.
I literally hear him, and I hear him. My uncle Junior whose name is actually Nathan Thomas. I hear you, and I think I have conversations with him off and on, and his biggest, or I should say, the thing that makes him most upset is that we're still here, right? I think the last time we chatted, he basically was just highly disturbed that he put in all this work, and marched on Bloody Sunday, got beat upside the head, and left bloody for his. He's my great uncle. So for me, here we are 2 generations later, and we're still here. So I think for him, and for all of my elders, they feel the tension just like we feel the tension. The frustration, they put in the work, and progress seems to be moving forward in one way or one direction. But I'm also a believer that when you get this much resistance, there has to be a breakthrough on the other end, right? So we've seen it happen in waves. And I think while we may be looking to experience some very difficult times ahead, I think the pushback, because it's just like that, this is where my philosophy cap is not as strong, or is not as
cultivated.
There we go. Years, but we talk about physics, and when you drop, when you pull the pendulum one way so far, it's gotta bounce back. So I say that to say, being hit this hard in this moment in this way, I do think is going to bring about a change that those folks who are empowered are not necessarily ready for when it does, because that's the reality of humanity. I just pray that it all works out for the good of those who are looking to do right by the people, and not necessarily be one of those things where it self implodes, right? Where as a whole. So we will see. We will see.
Amen. And then like also to go off of that about your great uncle, they got
Colonel Nathan Thomas. I think I found it.
Yeah, he
Found
was
it.
retired. Yeah, Was
yeah.
fought in Vietnam. Yeah, a lot of rich history there. Yeah.
Thank you for his service. Our servicemen are very near and
Yes.
dear. My grandfather
Service
fought in the
here
Korean
and
War.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And so as you talk about your great uncle, at one point, like during their time, right, they didn't have a blueprint, right? They were figuring it out in the moment. They're just like, we don't know that, like, if we go out and protest, and he said that he was hit in the head with a baton and like bloody and all, they didn't know what was going to come out of that, right? We have a blueprint, right?
We do.
We are not the first ones. We are by far the first ones to be in this situation. There are those who came before us. And if we were listening, if we were paying attention, and we live in a day of technology where we can do research, we can do our own research. We don't have to necessarily have to go to school to acquire this information. But that resiliency is in us, right? And we're not the first generation. And because we're here right now, we might not be the last generation to like figure it out. But what we do know was those before us figured it out, right?
Yeah.
And if they can figure it out, and they figure it out under a different type of turmoil, right? And so you have the Jim Crow laws, you have the lynchings, you have just like state sanctioned brutality, like pure state sanctioned. We still have those state sanctioned brutality, but it's not the same. It is not the same. And I will argue with people with that. It's not the same as what my grandfather went through, and he was born in 1934, in the midst of the Great Depression, or what my grandmother went through, and she was born in 1917. And so if they can come up through age under their circumstances and got to where they got to. My grandmother, she was a homeowner, became a nurse here in Newark. Grandfather, owned two homes, worked at Bell Atlantic, the telephone company, and all that. If they came up through what they came up through and got to where they got to, we could figure this out. Like, we could figure this out. We are their grandchildren. We are their children. We are their great grandchildren. We can do this because we got them in us. We got them in us.
I mean, our blueprint was so tight that even the current administration is literally following it. So they're just reversing it. So, I think that again just speaks volumes to the ingenuity of us as people. And to your point, I do think we'll figure it out. I think we're just going to have to be a lot more strategic in how we approach it this go around. But to your point, like we will figure it out, which is why I'm patiently optimistic, and I'm very hopeful.
We have to be hopeful, because that's what we have. We have to. We're not hopeful, they won, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to have that belief. And I appreciate how the arts is not something that like, oh, that was something that we did back in the day. Like how the arts truly is something, and I appreciate how you worded the museum should be a what, not just only the past or current. And if the museum is doing it right, if the museum is doing it well, if they're able to do it right, if they're able to do it well, then you'll feel that currentness, and that I'm feeling it, and I love it. I so love it. I eat it up. I'm just like, give me more, please. And so how we're utilizing our institutions, whether it be in when I say unintentional, it's just like by de facto. Like this is just like it's just coming together the way that we need it to come to. And so I know we're coming on the end of your segment, and so I greatly appreciate you making time to speak. We're not the bestest of friends in reality, but in my head and on IG, we are like two peas in a pod. I don't know if you know this, and that's okay, because it's not about you.
As the kids say, we in this together. Like, I'm a person where I come from a family where you show me love, I show you love. I'm always going to now. And at the end of the day, all we have is each other. So with that, know that in my head as well, we are best friends.
I appreciate appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I'm just over here like, yo, wait, he my bestie. Like he told me I got to record it, run it back, like all of that. And so thank you. And so not only thank you for the work that you're doing at the Newark Museum, but just thank you for just being your true authentic self in every space that you allow people to feel your energy, to feel your vibes. It is contagious. It gives people permission. I don't, when people say like, oh, you allow those kids to do it, like, no, I gave them permission. And so the way I show up in spaces gives others people to permission to show up in their true authentic self. And so thank you for being that for so many people that you probably will never meet. You'll never know their name. It's contagious. We love it. We are eating it up. We are eating you up. And definitely look forward to continue supporting you, the Newark Museum, throughout this entire journey that we're going through right now. And so
Wow. I appreciate.
Wait a minute. Let's just, I mean, he talked about you took a long walk with him and how he got here. What's happening at the museum that we need to be looking forward to?
I
The
appreciate
last time
that.
I was there,
Yeah.
can you see this, Darryl?
I see it. It's a
Daughters
little
of Latin
blurry, but
America, Daughters of Latin America anthology,
yes.
right? That Sandra Guzman did,
Yeah.
and she brought in some folks who was spotlighted in that anthology.
Yeah.
Latin American women who came in and lifted up the Africanity and the indigenous spaces in the museum.
Yeah.
Right? It's a
Yeah.
powerful night. Powerful night. So, well, in spite of everything that's going on,
Mhm.
having a safe place for us to go to take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And being comfortable where we can have the interruption conversation when we need to. What's happening at the museum?
That's a
What
great
takeaways you want folks to take away from this conversation about what's happening at the museum?
That's a great question. I'm glad, and thank you for asking that. I mean, we have a couple of cool things or big things happening that I think will continue to elevate folks and enrich their lives by being, more knowledgeable about. But Amina Robinson is a huge exhibition that is about to open. If you're unfamiliar with Amina Robinson, I would definitely say Google the work. Again, we're talking about representation, why it matters. And if you think about some of our current contemporary works that we currently house, like Bisa Butler, we were one of the first to, again, collect Bisa Butler.
Love Bisa's work.
Butler was on the cover of Time.
Maplewood, New Jersey. She's local.
She used to be a teacher at East Orange, and used to come to the museum quite often, even before, again, we became collectors of her work. And then from there, other museums also saw the value. So I think about all the amazing contemporary artists we have in our current space. We just ended an amazing show by Bonnie, which again underscored the human trafficking pandemic that spotlighted people of color being caught up in that system, right? Specifically Afro Latinas and Afro Hispanic folks, right? So I think the Amina Robinson show is something to look out for. Also, I want to just put that out there that Newark residents, just remember the museum is a free resource for you if you live in the city of Newark. So just show up with your ID so that you can show that you live in the city of Newark. Secondly, we do have one free community day that happens for the entirety of the city and beyond. So whether you're a citizen or not, each month we typically do one free day that's called Community Days. In those Community Day moments, we activate the museum in a way where there's lots of cool things for all people of all ages. And then if you're looking for something fun, but more of an adult audience, we do have our Art After Darks, which they happen once a quarter now. And that's primarily due to budget cuts. But we are, still doing amazing big things with the Art After Dark brand. We just had an event last night where we collaborated with Vibes After Dark. That was tension and release. So the idea of we all under tension right now, right? We all live in the space, and our adult audiences have to often show up for families, for their husbands, for their wives, for their partners, for work, and not able to just let it out. And so Art After Dark last night was all about letting it out, giving it back to the atmosphere and releasing all that stress while simultaneously celebrating a Black female-driven business that's been in operation for 10 plus years. So I think all those things.
Who's the female Black?
Zenaida Watson. So yeah, let me shout out Zenaida Watson, who runs and owns Vibes After Dark. Working with her, she's also sits on our community advisory. She sits on our advisory committee board as well. So it's our community advisory committee. Did I say that right? But anyway, she's been a staple and a very amazing person to collaborate with from our community. And she's an artist first, and who's very intentional about creating space for other artists. So I say all that to say we got all we need right here around us. We just have to know how to best utilize those skill sets so that we don't go back to the dark ages, because we can't be the Moors from the past having to bring everybody back to light, right? So let's ground ourselves and look to our left and our right and see those community leaders and activists who can sort of help us push forward. And I think art is always the thing that catches the people's attention, and it's through you're able to educate them about the realities of past, present, and what may be plaguing them in the current, or may plague them in the current and the new future, or what could be the future. So art is always a tool to help break it down.
Amen to that. And I'm a firm believer. So back in the day, I did this thing called the Newark School Board. and I when I first ran for the board back in 2018, during an interview as a candidate, I would say that everything that we need to help ourselves to grow and prosper here in the city of Newark, we have it. Like, we have it right here. And that's not to say that we don't want help or that we don't need help and that we don't, we're being exclusive. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, well, that's what I was saying. I was just saying that, like, we don't have to look with from out to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we have so much here. And if anything, it's untapped. It's not cultivated. Yeah. And so, but if we tap it, if we cultivate it, then it will just turn into this beautiful, beautiful thing that resonates and speaks to so many people. And it's good for us, because I just spoke with the principal of Chancellor Avenue School here in Newark, Dr. Lopes, and we were just talking about how the different success that adults that we have, that we're not even the best version, right? And so, like, our youth, they're so dope. Our children, our young ones. In the segment before, we were talking about how the young man who was a part of the tragedy with the shooting of the police officer, and how that tragedy is not of his alone, it is of the community. And so as a community, what are we doing so that won't happen again? The community in one way or another has failed that child. And so how do we make sure that we don't fail our children, how we keep uplifting them and how we keep pouring into them? Because when we pour into our children, that's when we're going to start getting like cures for cancer, right? That's how we're going to start getting, like, how do we solve these issues that we haven't been able to solve within the last hundreds of years, is because that we are depriving our youth the capability of reaching their full potential. And we need them to reach their full potential because we need to function as a society. We need problem solvers. We need people that are going to look outside the box, or that can look within the box to find the solutions that may not be privy to me because I have my limitations. That might not be privy to you because you have your limitations. But the work that you and I and everyone that comes on All Politics Are Local, all the work that we have done, people have poured into us. Like you said, your mom said, like, nah, you got to get this education, baby. And so, yes, live your dreams, but, classes too.
Yeah.
And so
I was going to say, falling back on that, that's how we are where we are, right? Because listening.
Exactly, because someone poured into us. Not just that we listened, right? They poured into us.
Yeah.
And so some people don't even have the option to listen to someone because no one has even told them, they haven't even been poured into. And so the more that we're able to, and I'm speaking about youth, but this is just people along the generations. It doesn't matter if you're in high school, if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, being able to, and that's something that Newark does, not just we're only pouring into this age group or we're only pouring into this subgroup. It is pouring into all. Because when we're able to pour into all, it's better for our society because then we're all able to reach our full potential. And we need that.
You hit it on the nose. like gatekeeping, that's gatekeeping is only going to hold you back. Gatekeeping is rooted in capitalism, and we know capitalism is rooted in white supremacy. So I think it's important that to your point, that we understand that gatekeeping does no one any service, and it totally does the entire community, Black, white, Asian, and everybody in between.
The entire.
Yeah,
it's not just Black community, like a disservice, it's everyone.
I mean, we recognize that DEI has benefited the vast majority of all people, and more so other folks than us directly, right? So
yeah, we're the last.
Exactly.
It's like 5 people, and like we're at the bottom.
And so when you think about programs and things that are targeted by, again, capitalism or actually late capitalism, again, which is rooted in white supremacy, I think all of those things, they matter. And it's a little cringy when you hear or see folks who are just I don't think they're unaware. I think they just refuse. They refuse to wear because of whatever that emotion or that's or of hate that they refuse to let go. It becomes an impediment, and it ultimately hinders what could be a great thing for them, their families, and their communities because they can't see past it. So to your point, like gatekeeping, like get that out of here. Like you got
ghetto. It's ghetto.
It's real ghetto.
It's the ghetto of gatekeeping. We're gonna write a book, okay? That's the title, the ghetto of gatekeeping.
Yes.
But yeah, and Zaid, let me know if you should be wrapping up. Oh, I see Professor Carter. And so before we let you go, thank you again for coming on. We appreciate you, your authentic words, your authenticness, and just like be speaking, I would say truth to power, because you're speaking in your truth from your perspective, and that's extremely powerful. And so before we let you go, and you already know the question I'm about to ask you, because like you said, you came in on the top a part of the last segment, the top half of it. And so who is your favorite rap artist, your favorite rap group, favorite rap song? You don't have to name all of that, but it's just true to all politics are local. So
this is a really great question, because I love music. Like I like live and breathe and eat it. And so like growing up on artists like and loving them, Tupac, Biggie, Jay-Z, Nas, like these are the artists that I grew up on. I look at the new landscape of artists, and to see what's out there, I'm going to have to lean with Kendrick. And I know people are like, oh, that's typical. But I mean, he's a great montage of all of those artists. He's a great storyteller, like Biggie, but he's also very intentional, like Pac, with his words. And he has the charisma of Jay-Z. So, and the Nas, right? So I feel like, each generation is supposed to get better, to your point earlier, right? We should be pouring into the next generation. I feel like he took every single drop from hip hop lineage and allowed himself to sort of be immersed in this, and to come forth with music that not only speaks to the culture, but it also shapes the culture. And I think art is about a conversation. So whether you hate them or love them, you're going to learn.
I love it. I love your deep dive into that perspective, and so appreciate that.
That's an artist good. That's all good.
Amen. And so thank you again. We appreciate you. Look forward to going my next time at the Newark Museum. Look forward to seeing you in all your outfits, because I just want to borrow them. I don't have to have them, but I want to borrow them. Thank you so much. Don't want to monopolize any more of your time, but thank you so much for being our guest. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. And just know that you all have open invites, including you, Professor Carter. If ever you want to swing by, please just tap me. Let me know. I will give you a one-on-one walkthrough of our entire collection. I love it.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Darryl, I was actually, my cousin was an arts and craft teacher there in 1967, 68. And
Uncle.
She paid me $5 every Friday to go in and help her in 1968, 1967.
I love that.
I've been going to the library and to the museum for longer than you've been alive.
Well, again, I would love to show
proud of it.
Yeah, I would love to share some of our new stuff, especially when the Amina Robinson exhibition opens. So again, that invite stands. So you all just tap me whenever. Thank you again for that, Professor Carter. And thank you, Asia and Zaid. Appreciate you all.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, you too.
Hi,
Professor
Professor
Carter.
Hi,
Carter.
Agent Norton. Hi, Saeed. I'm like, I'm very happy. Let me see what time it is. Oh,
Don't start.
7:59.
Don't even start.
I'm so proud of you. Oh my God. It's because Asia's here.
Yeah, we do have.
You got to keep them because they'll keep talking. You got to keep them like, okay. And then they'll go down these rabbit holes. I'm like, that's a cool rabbit hole, but we got other stuff to do.
Larry
okay.
jumped in and jumped out and disappeared on me.
It's okay.
That gave Linda. That gave Asia more time to really open up with that young brother. It was a good conversation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I love young people. Asia, if you feel tired after I leave, it's because I'm a vampire when I'm around young people. I take your energy and use it so I can outrun my 13-year-old niece.
I'll give it. I got it.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's get to why we brought you here.
Yeah, let's get to why you brought me here. What do you want to know about Trump?
She is Professor Carter. She is one of our lawyers and legal teachers. And this is one of your students who graduated a little while ago too. Asia got something next to her name now. That she could use in some of these tough places.
Yeah, I got a little Esquire at the end.
Yeah. Well, only reason I use Esquire is not for money. I use to get into places where people wouldn't let me in otherwise.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I can talk about law school. I'm just like, oh, so y'all listen to lawyers?
Yeah.
Okay, say that.
Actually, I'm gonna make you jealous. We paid undergraduate school paid $15 a credit.
I don't want to hear it.
For law school, it was $750 a semester.
Semester?
Yeah, which means we didn't have to worry about jobs and stuff, and we can engage in intellectual discourse every day. Because the rent was $500. You get a roommate and pay $250.
Whatever it costs, they put me on the waiting list at 83. I'm still waiting.
You can raise hell when you're only paying $750 a semester for law school. You can't do it when you got $100,000 loans.
That's a very, very, very true statement. I'm triggered. I'm just gonna be quiet. I'm gonna listen. And so.
All right, let's go.
Now, we're in a wild scene in terms of elected leadership, but we're also in a very muddled scene in terms of the courts and how much they are going to affirm and not affirm the madness coming out of the land of the elected, right? And 1798, I ain't even that old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come up with the Alien and Enemies Act signed by John Adams.
Right.
Oh my God. Right.
It minimizes due process, right to detain with little, if any, due process, which is supposed to be a major premise for this country, the right to be heard. Interesting. First of all, the courts are not going to save us, right? This is not 1966, 67, 50s. This ain't happening. We have a constitutional crisis. We have a president that is basically ignoring people. And if not, he has the Supreme Court. So he's going to see what he can get away with. But actually, even before we get to that, we have to talk about Trump, right? First of all, Trump is just a tool. When he gave the wealthy the $1.5 trillion tax credit, they said, oh, wait a minute, hold on. We don't particularly like him, but he serves as an adequate tool for us. Mm-hmm. So he just happened to be the right person at the right time, with the right personality. He has no sense of humanity. He's a spoiled brat, blah, 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 blah. I've been watching Trump since he's only 8 years older than me. So I've been watching him since he was like, bachelor, whatever.
I remember that mess.
Yeah, back in the day. And he's no different. What he did to people then, he's doing to the country now. Now, he just happens to have, Heritage 2025, this whole 2025, which is, and I said the last time you guys had me on it. First of all, they put 2025 on the internet for everybody to see almost 3 years ago. And people didn't want to read 997 pages.
Yes, they did.
Not only that, I said this the last time I was there. This started, actually, there's a book called Neoliberalism that talks about how neoliberalism starts in 1470 off the coast of Africa, the east coast of Africa with the Spanish and the whole concept of scorch and burn, which we're experiencing now. But moving, more frequently to when I was in law school during the Reagan administration. The first draft of 2025 was effectively then. But even before that, you had two papers. And I encourage your audience to read these for yourself. I always tell my students, don't believe anything I say, do your own homework. Oh, that requires you to read. And that's the problem, because 25% of the American public that should be reading either cannot read or cannot read proficiently. That's a problem. So you get, like a Trump person, because that's one of the reasons, but there's some others I'm going to talk about. So you have 2025, the first draft is written during the Reagan administration. It's not new. These people have been planning 20 years ago. The Republicans were actually putting as many people in state houses as they could.
That's right.
20 years ago. Oh, we're almost 25 years ago.
That's right.
Exactly. And then when you talk about 2025 in the Reagan administration, part of it, which help, hi Larry Ham, which helped the Trump and them effectively do what they're doing, is that you had the Reagan administration, they went after the bureaucracy, but basically they didn't do it the way that Doge is doing it. What they did is they stopped funding. They were underfunding organizations or the administrative agencies, so they couldn't work effectively. And the American public could get mad at them and say, okay, well, we'll bring the private sector in because the private sector will be more efficient. But then in 2015, or right before Trump left office the first time, there was something called Section F. They were actually interviewing people for the jobs they laid people off or fired them this time around. They were hiring people, or at least interviewing them, in 2015, 2016, right before Biden came into office. So they were already planning this. Now for Trump, I'm using for a minute, as I said, the oligarchs, the elites, whatever, they didn't particularly like him because he's bombastic and he's Trump. They would prefer to have somebody like the governor of Florida. He has like Ivy League credentials. He was in the military. But the problem for him is, one is you couldn't just take Trump's people and move them to somebody else. And then he started trying to out-Trump Trump. So that was the problem. They only cared that Trump can make them a whole lot of money. He's a tool. He's an instrument for the time. Everybody's paying attention to him, which ends up he's a red herring to some degree and a diversion for us. Instead of us playing, I think it was a 3-card, 5-card Monty. While you looking over here, they doing over there. Right? And so we're not paying attention like we normally don't for a host of reasons. One is when you take civics out of the school system, the public school system, and primarily the school system of those who kind of led the efforts in terms of changes in this country, meaning Black people, right? And you take civics out. Now, mind you, even though they were taking it out of public schools in the urban areas, but for the teachers in the segregated South who were teaching 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds how to be citizens and what their power was as citizens when they couldn't even be second-class citizens, right? All of us who think we made it on our own, I'm sorry, all of us who think they made it on its own, but for these children who used to get dressed up in their Sunday go-to-meeting clothes, prepared to die. Hear what I'm saying? Understood death and were prepared to die for the dignity of their parents and their grandparents. As they came up through the Great Migration with that knowledge, they didn't come with a book with tabs on it and a table of contents. They came with the knowledge that allowed for a Sharp James or Gibson or Coleman or any of these people. And many of us who have employment opportunities didn't think we did it on our own. But for some of these people, those doors of opportunity would not be open in the first place. So no matter how smart you think you are, if the doors weren't open, you wouldn't get in the first place. So getting back to Trump. He is an instrument. He serves them well. Of course, he's got to get his piece because he's Trump, right? And of course, he's going to screw everybody because that's what he does, and he does well. And he gets people against their interests to go along with him. He's almost as good as, I don't know if you know what Edwin Bernays is. Edwin Bernays was I guess you could say, the father of advertising, commercials, public relations, propaganda, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who took Sigmund Freud's psychology and turned that into something that has really created a consumer economy that capitalism so desperately needs in order to operate. So we're looking at a Trump, and we're paying a lot of attention to him. And he does things like he played everybody in terms of the recent tariffs. From what I understand, there's investigations they're trying to do because they were just messing, and I guess they will continue to just mess with the economy and mess with the country until people just say, wait a minute, hold on, this is crazy, we got to do something. And not that people aren't doing something. I mean, Larry will probably tell you that there was a rallies around the country and around the world on Saturday.
Almost 1,300. We
Right.
did
The
one in Newark the
problem,
day before.
right.
Almost 1,300 around the country. Big day of action.
The problem was that people got hip to it, and it was the Democrats were a little bit more involved than some people would want them to do. You know, they would want to see the Democrats do something else, but you know, that was good to people out. I think what happened when they said hands off NATO, and if you know anything about the whole Russia and Ukraine, you know that during the first Bush administration, there was a deal made where the United States and NATO wouldn't come so close to Russia. People forget about that part.
Right.
Anyway, so, you know, in terms of Trump, that's the person we're dealing with. He's not any different than he's been for let me see now, since he was 28 years old, not soon. He's had his attorney who, you know, whose name escapes me right now, who was the attorney for McCarthy during the Red Scare, who brought all that knowledge to Trump, who taught Trump well, his father, his whole history and his family. So it's not unusual he would be doing this. The problem is people don't know their history, and it's not meant for us to know our history. I'm just a little different. I just happen to like this stuff. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's the person that we're dealing with. Just to go back for a second, I talked about how 2025, the first draft is during the Reagan administration. I also would refer people to the Powell memorandum.
Yes.
Powell, who wrote this on behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who was quite concerned with the changes that were happening in the 1960s. People were asking questions. Oh, don't do that. And also the crisis in American democracy, which was commissioned by the wealthy people in response to the Black Power movement, the Young Lords, the anti-war movement, the women's movement, all those movements that basically said, how dare you think you're going to make us do something? And at that time, young people understood civics. They knew what their power was. And the elite said, no, we can't have this. So they get real concerned about that time. And it evolves to the point that what we have now is 2020. So, you know, I know Trump disavowed it, whatever, but, you know, he has these people in back of him. I think the Doge part with Elon Musk is was not quite expected. It just happened. I mean, you know, remember, Trump supported the Clintons politically, right? And when you talk about Elon Musk, actually, some of the money he got to start some of his companies came from the Obama administration. I think 75% of money, a grant he got, 75% of $1 billion he got from under the Obama administration, right? So these people have connections all over. But then the whole PayPal, the South African PayPal cabal, you know, adds another dimension to this that I'm not sure was really on the radar like it is now. So anyway, you know, I think we need to look at the big picture in terms of Trump. I think he's a good red herring to an extent because everybody's concentrating on him, which he likes anyway. But there's a lot of other things going on that people are not paying attention to. And so, you know, particularly for Black people, it's really interesting for me because I'm thinking when I grew up, and I think Larry's about my age. Saeed, I'm not sure how old you are, but I know Larry's about my age.
Yeah, he's about your age.
When I think about how the world revered Black people, because the world revered us, we were like the ones who led the way and everybody else benefited from it, but the world. And then when Barack Obama came in, it was interesting because I think it was average of 6% of Black Americans agreed with wars and conflict. When Barack Obama came in, it went up to like 50% because it was him, right? So, and then I'm looking at how our music was our superpower and how our music's been co-opted and it's co-opted our children and the technology and all the things that have happened to us to lose our standing in the world. And, you know, it's just really interesting dynamics. And then we're at this point where we have somebody like Trump and we're not in the lead. We're not in the lead. And to me, that's just me, we're the largest unwanted group. We're the largest unwanted group. So, you know, you really need the largest unwanted group to take the lead.
Having said that, I want to bring you back to the original question.
Okay.
Because that's what I want to get at, because we need to be able to unpack what is playing out with the abuse of that law and what it could ultimately mean for our people. All right. And I've got some my own take on that, but I wanted to hear from a legal expert on that. So the Alien Enemies Act is now
of
Folks
1798.
to Louisiana, shipping folks to El Salvador,
Mhm.
right? All the hell we raised around Mahmoud Khalil. Court just ruled against him, right? He still may wind up going out of here, right? And we've got our own history with stuff like this on another front. But I wanted to hear from you first, right?
Well, that particular act, I'm not a specialist in the area, but the due process issue, right? And then this whole thing that everything is becoming an emergency. Now, this is not the first time. There's a foundation for this, right? If you look at under the Bush administrations in particular, where you have the Unitarian president, and this started having expansion of what the powers of the president. This doesn't just start in a vacuum. There's always a baseline. So in terms of Guantanamo, look what we did there. We ended up with a sort of a civil military tribunal to at least give the illusion of due process. But now they don't even want to have illusion due process. What you said about the courts are not going to save us. The only thing the courts have is the ability to interpret. They don't have a military, and they don't create the law. So you really need to have an educated citizenry that understands at the end of the day, the people are going to have to make the difference here. We have to decide as a society what we're going to do. All parts of it. Now remember, capitalism needs a couple of things. It needs white supremacy, it needs chaos and confusion, and it needs us at each other's throats. That makes it easy to be able to play all of us. So when you're playing all of us, then it makes it easy. The little bit of due process you have under the Alien Enemies Act of 1728 and the companion, the Sedition Act of 1798 makes it easy for us to be in this position. Now, I don't know if you guys know, I just saw it yesterday, that now people who are repeat offenders, right? They're looking at repeat offenders, sending them to El Salvador.
Yes.
Now, who are the people that are going to probably become underneath that? It's already hard if you have somebody in the criminal and justice system and you're trying to communicate with them and go visit. Now you're going to move those same people from that same population to El Salvador under the guise that they're repeat offenders. And we know most of the people in our communities, most of it is poverty crime. Poverty crime. So you're going to take, and I'm talking about, this is for citizens, people born here. But even that clause, the birthright citizen clause in the Constitution, all of that was around who? Us, Black people. So
that's coming up again.
Right. And the thing is, the problem is, I hear, Black folks, and we got people who supported Trump, and everybody is entitled. But the problem with technology, the way it's used against us with the algorithm thing, keeping you from talking to people who think differently from you and so on, is that you don't have a situation where people read. They get a little information off the internet. It's not vetted. I don't care if you disagree with it. That's not my point. Because you have people who write books and stuff, you may disagree, but at least it's enough information so you really kind of think about it. People take a little bit and they make decisions about their lives, all aspects of their lives with that. And on top of that, we use the language of the people who oppress us. And it's not that we haven't been used. I grew up with people coming from the South who knew how to manage the English language. Many of them hadn't gone past the 8th grade, and they can use the English language in front of white people, which is their language, and the language of our oppressor, and manage the language, and the people didn't know what they were talking about. But now we give everything to them. I'm listening to something, and I'm not a Facebook internet person, but I heard 2 people on, and they were talking about the nuances of how Black people use the English language. And they were explaining to people on Facebook, which was giving up all our little things so people know what the nuances of language. So we use the language of our oppressor. We think, we make major decisions. We do our whole life based on the language of people who didn't like us. On top of it, so you have the fact that the citizenship part, you have the fact that you have 25% of the American public who cannot read or read proficiently. You got people who don't like to read because they've been socialized that you just take a little bit of information and make big decisions off of that, whether you like somebody or not, what you're going to buy, just major decisions in life and no decisions at all. That's what we're dealing with. So anyway, go ahead, Said. You had something else you want to ask me?
No, yeah, I want to make sure I'm bringing a demo into this conversation. He stepped away a little while ago, but I want
No,
to
he's
make sure
here.
he comes into this conversation, right? Because all of this stuff that we're talking about has got a whole lot of folks, including our folks, on our heels in terms of what's left of our rights. So in terms of the fight back and the pushback, right? We've got things coming up. We've got this People's Convention coming up on April 26th, right? They came out of a very large march that we did in January to observe Dr. King's birthday. The March of Resistance is what we called it. Some over 300 organizations endorsed that march from all over the state. All that we're up against, all that we're hearing, all that's right now, all the resistance is in the air, right? We want to direct folks to how they can jump in this particular fight.
Well, let me just say this before Adima comes on.
Okay.
President Roosevelt in 1930s laid out some positions that people in this country need to take to avoid having fascism in this country. He said in the 1930s. One was our education, which they're going after in terms of all these schools. The other one was about monopolies. And there were some others I can't remember. And also there was a piece, I just heard it today about Lyndon Baines Johnson. And what they were doing, I guess you can go back and say what Roosevelt was doing, providing a safety net. Because remember, Roosevelt actually saved capitalism by providing the safety net. Otherwise, the American public would have raised hell and turned this system over. And I can't remember the general's name who they tried to convince should overthrow Roosevelt's administration. Right. So, I mean, both him and what they did with Medicare and Medicaid, those are all the ways or some of the techniques to avoid fascism. And I'll say this, what is happening in this country recently, and Trump, again, in the right person, I guess the right place, is that Americans in particular, but people in certain countries around the world are looking for somebody to solve their problems. So they're looking for the strong man, whether it's in Hungary, El Salvador, or here. And I don't know if that says a lot in terms of we're supposed to be a quote Christian nation. So is that saying that their God has failed them? Right. And they're looking for a strong man to solve their whatever the challenges are, right? And it's interesting because Franklin Roosevelt is talking about this stuff in the 1930s. Here we are, 2025, and we ain't ready. Go ahead, Adimu. Where's he at?
He's been popping in and out.
Pop back in
and out since.
You can't leave us hanging. Get in here. He'll be back. But I'm saying that this stuff is not just happening. It's been a foundation, and I will also say while we're waiting for him. Right. Democrat, Republican. The Democrats are complicit in this. Mm-hmm. Right. When Clinton got rid of
what you mean? Make it plain.
When Bill Clinton got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act, that resulted in the 2008. They didn't call it what did they call it? Not a recession. It was an adjustment, a financial adjustment. When he got rid of that. Right, he got rid of it, got rid of Glass-Steagall. The whole purpose of Glass-Steagall was a safety net to ensure that banks were not playing with our depositors' money and gambling with it. So we would end up in a 2007-2008 adjustment, financial adjustment. Mm-hmm. And like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all these things were things that Roosevelt, and I'm not saying Roosevelt was a great person. That's what I'm saying. The people forced him to do this. Remember, Roosevelt's family made their money off the opium trade. So he wasn't like, Jesus, but between Francis Perkins, the social worker from New York, and A. Philip Randolph, who threatened to have a
march on Washington
in the 1930s.
In the middle of the World War. That's right. Come on.
Mm-hmm. He said, we'll just show up for this walk. And Roosevelt said, oh, no, you won't. What do you want? Right. So I think what it is, I like history. I always like history, and I also know that a lot of people don't like history because they associate it with wealthy white men. And people don't realize that we all have a history from the moment you came out of your mother's womb. I like to say that, it gives a certain optics to it. You had history, your family history, your community history. But people haven't taught history that way. They just said, you know, you got to know these names and these dates, and you got to remember them. And when you take the test, you know, because they use those words tests and exams. I never use the word. I think I'll kill myself if I use the word test and exam. I say assessment activities. Demonstrate that you understand what you know. I'm not interested in what you remember. I'm interested in what you know. But that's not how history is taught. So, you know, between not having history where people like it, between not having civics, which the churches used to do. The churches used to, this is the work the churches did.
Sunday
you didn't
school,
have pastors flying around in planes.
Sunday schools, freedom schools.
Sunday school, freedom schools, exactly. That's not happening now because we, you know, and I say the language has helped us cross over the language in affirmative action, which basically expanded. We had a middle class to some small middle class. We had a middle class. It expanded the middle class, but not for the benefit of our community, but for the powers to be to have access to our money and for our money not to stay in our community. I grew up in an all-Black community in the old Third Ward in Newark, New Jersey. The money circulated like it did in Asian community 900 times. Nobody wanted our money because we weren't clean, right? Nobody wanted Black money because it's dirty. Black
mic drop in this conversation.
What'd you say?
That's the second. I'm using the language of this show. You know, we older than that, Eds, right? But that's the second mic dropper in this conversation that you did.
Yeah,
First
nobody
mic drop was when I raised a question about the Alien Enemies Act, and that is, you know, you rounded it off, you know, for repeat offenders, right? Folks ain't looking at that. And they don't see the relevance. It's right there.
Right.
Okay,
they said repeat offenders, automatically Black people should come up, and particularly Black men. Right. And it comes down to, you know, they're only, from what I understand, I heard they only get paid $6 million. The El Salvador is getting paid $6 million. Right. That's all they're getting paid, but it's a lot of money to them. And I don't know if they're going to increase the amount when they start sending repeat offenders. And unfortunately, we may be waiting until they're sending, quote, repeat offenders from New Jersey and Newark and East Orange and Irvington before we realize what's really happening here. Yeah. But you kind of, if you read the 997 pages of the, oh, wait a minute, my energy is going out. Hold tight.
Asia, you got to jump in because you the young one.
Asia, jump in. Yeah, be me. Asia, be me.
Vampire needs some blood.
Hi, guys. I'm Professor Carter, part 2. And I would like to say, I'm just here just to listen. I'm listening. I'm writing notes. Like, I am learning. I am taking all of this in. And this is all interesting stuff. And I was able to do somewhat of a deep dive. Well, Roosevelt, when I was in law school, when I took my human rights course, and I wrote a comparative law paper between U.S. and South Africa's housing right laws, and how the right to housing is enumerated in South Africa's constitution. And we know that the U.S. Constitution, housing is not enumerated, but we do look to our states' constitutions for our housing rights. So, Professor Carr, are you good now? You good now?
I'm just so, you know, it's interesting for housing, because housing should be a right. Asia, you handle it well. Should be a right. And when I tell people that, even when you talk about public housing, and when I met Larry and I were talking about his housing situation growing up, and my housing, I grew up in Scudder Homes, which was really the only public housing project built for Black people. All of them had mostly been built for people coming out of World War II because there was a crisis, a housing crisis. But let me just tell you, before we can move into Scudder Homes, they came to see how clean my parents were. They spot checked to see how clean my parents were and how we were being raised. And all of us were required to scrub and wax the floor. Everybody on the floor, except for the senior, was required to scrub and wax the floor and wipe the walls down. And on the first floor or the common areas like the hallways, the stairwells, facilities did that. But, you know, growing up, and I remember the milkman bringing milk when we lived on the first floor, leaving the bottles of milk at the door and nobody bothered. But see, I grew up before the heroin came in.
That's a long time ago.
And before the crack. And so I grew up when we didn't have, people have conflicts because we have different fingerprints. But I didn't see a police officer until I was 13 years old after the rebellion of 67. Right? Because we used I call it now, our Africanness to resolve whatever conflicts we had. And if it got just a little more, you brought the Nation of Islam in. But never to go out and get other people from other communities to come and solve our problems, our challenges. But our challenges we had, when I think about growing up with people who were sharecroppers and tenant farmers and fled the Ku Klux Klan, they were much more mature, emotionally mature. And I realized, when they didn't go to other
third mic dropper.
Okay, they didn't go to other people's schools. Because when you go, we send our children, and I know everybody's proud about Harvard, Yale, whatever. They're not training us to come back to our community and serve our community. And so I dealt with people who had not been contaminated. I'm sorry, I had to say that. They've not been contaminated against the people who look like them, their own culture.
The great Ella Baker's African name is Fundi.
Exactly.
That's essentially what it means.
Exactly.
That's essentially what her African name means. Go ahead, keep going.
No, I'm just saying that
go ahead.
In terms of history, right? And this is relatively recent history. Even just something as simple as public housing. And then I watch what happened, Black folks against their own interests went against public housing, and now we got homeless people. Because we only paid 25% of whatever you made. And for single men, you had Father Divine and Daddy Grace. Right. So you can get a room for $2.50. Go downtown and shine shoes down at Penn Station, get a room for $2.50 a day. Right. And then you have the rise of inflation and this is around the demise of the unions around the Nixon administration and also getting off the gold. So that kind of contributed to the increase. We started having inflation because with the unions, however you feel about them, whether you were a union member or not, whenever there was an increase in the costs, people's salaries went up. That's not happening. It hasn't happened for a long time. A very long time.
The United States is the least unionized of all of the major so-called industrial nations of the West.
What is it now? About 9%, and that's public and private?
Ridiculous.
7%?
Ridiculous.
Very low.
The bastion of democracy is the least unionized. You have the least rights to protect your labor and your right to collective bargaining in the United States than anywhere else. And man, that's shoot. Folks got to wake up.
All right. So listen, we talked about Trump and how he's only 8 years old. He's 8 years older than me. We talked about a little bit about the Alien Enemies Act, which gives very little due process, if any, and how all of a sudden everything is national security. And unfortunately, like the courts we had before when we had Justice Douglas and people like that, who said, wait a minute, to the president, you don't get to decide what the law says. This is the Supreme Court. You don't get to decide. We'll do in camera and tell you what it says. But that's not the kind of court we have right now. We have a court that's owned by the people who own it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a guy who I would love to get into this space. And he's so under the radar, unfortunately. Who? Right. And then in the Senate, Richard Whitehouse, senator from Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. I used to try to get him on the program.
At the top of his lungs for years about how money is not just thoroughly eroding the electoral process, but how it eroded the judicial process.
Exactly.
Textbook the way he did it, and he's been doing it for several years, but he's the least heard of the most clear.
And think about why. Because of what he's saying, do you really want people to hear him? He's from Delaware, right?
He's from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, right. Yeah, the big chattel slave.
The ship built where they built the slave ships.
Right, built the ship. Made a lot of money off slave ships.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't history fun, Asia?
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I eat it up. I love it. I was Africana Studies major in undergrad, and so I'm here for it. But no, Providence. Oh my word. I know they have like a Quaker school, and I'm trying to like remember like the name. But yeah, the Brown family.
Right, the Brown family. Yeah.
But complete. I know I'm a little familiar with that history, but yeah, the Brown family, they made their money off of
Wall Street made their money, right? People forget. But that's a whole nother thing. We have to do something on Black inventors and Black entrepreneurs, because a lot of our children, when you talk about that, a lot of our children think entrepreneurship starts with white people. We're the only ones who pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps when we had no bootstrap,
Literally.
right? And the only ones who pulled themselves without bootstraps, without anything. Everybody else had some abatements or subsidies or something else. But where's the demo? I was waiting for him to jump in whenever he wanted to.
He's been in and out. He's been in and out. He all over the map.
He's in between things. He's in between things. Wow, I actually have been on for 30.
You got your half hour and a couple minutes over.
I got my half hour.
How about that? How about that, there, Linda?
I am so awed by this. And listen, I was in court, and the gentleman who adopted him and his partner, who had been together off and on since grammar school, went on their own individual lives, got married to other people, whatever, and then came back together, adopted this young lady, and he proposed to her in court after the adoption. And more importantly, they took me to eat afterwards.
That's beautiful.
I'm glad love is still in the air.
I still appreciate you guys asking me to come on. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm bringing to the table, but what the heck?
We had several mic droppers a day, and the piece that I wanted to add.
That was Asia. Asia brought this out of me. Yeah, you know what it is? Because I realized also, Saeed, there's a lot of things that I don't think we took for granted. They were our normal, and not only were they our normal, they weren't. How we grew up was not much different. It's a different time for our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and those who came generations before us. But after the heroin and the crack cocaine, there are things that were our normal that they're never going to have the luxury. I didn't even know it was a luxury to have the experience of like just playing.
Yes.
Not
worrying about getting shot.
Right. Just, just valuing.
When I used to shut the streets down, Asia, you appreciate this. It's putting your educator and your mama hat on for a second. When my troops used to shut down the streets here in Newark, and this is before we even started the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, we were shutting stuff down regularly. And we wanted to get at the corruption and the madness with the police, but the community said, but the boy was shooting at the other boy and he hit grandma outside, and that's the community. So we're doing that, right? We're shutting the streets down. And the first thing I always had to do when we shut the streets down in this town over whatever it is we were doing it for is apologize to those same streets for the mistakes that we made in our socialization, in our pursuit of, me using P-Funk language, the pleasure principle, right? Running to heroin, cocaine, and crack instead of running those who brought that into our community out of our community.
Yeah.
Right? And we have never recovered from that. We haven't recovered from it legally.
We
haven't recovered from it medically, emotionally, socially. We're still, our kids are in all this turmoil. They didn't create it.
Yeah.
They didn't create it.
Right.
Can I just say something really quick? And so my father, he died from a drug overdose when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
And so I am a child of the consequence of...
You're a survivor. You're a family survivor.
Yeah, and still surviving, right? And so the impact that... And my father, when I was around when I was first born, he was also incarcerated for having possession. And I truly take issue with criminalizing individuals that have substance abuse and how we villainize those individuals. And I think, like we spoke to this earlier, Zaid, about how Black people are treated different in our criminal justice system when it comes down to drug usage, et cetera, in comparison to our white counterpartners, and how they're perceived to have a problem, but we are perceived to have to be villainized. Like they have a problem, but we are the problem. And so when I was 12, I did not know that my father died from a drug overdose. I didn't find that out until later on. My family thought it was just best. Well, not to say that they thought it was best. It was just something that just not spoken. And so my journey of understanding like my father's addiction, how it came about, and how he got to the point where it was an overdose that led to his demise, and what that meant for me as a Black girl, and then turning into a Black woman, and then turning into a Black mother of a boy. And I named my son after my father. And so the word, I am of the generation of parents that had those health issues, and what
Well,
that means for
I will,
us, and what that means for my policies.
and that's interesting because, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I do adoptions for the state. And when I read those reports, it reminds me of what started with the heroin. And a lot of people don't know the heroin was purposely put here to put Black folks to sleep, the young people to
And
sleep.
to get
It was
us
brought
off
in by
the
organized
shut
crime,
the system down.
working with FBI, and they had to make it cool. It was marketed for Black and Puerto Ricans because they knew they would do nothing if it wasn't cool. And then when we talk about crack, right? Because this whole immigration thing is connected to some degree on that, and how the CIA was funding the Mujahideen against the Soviet Union, and that money was bringing the crack in to fund this
That's right.
war against the Soviet Union, and it's running through Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and the people who are migrating here, who became these people, and now they want to kick out. They were migrating because the impact of the cartels that were
That's right.
formed by our government. See,
The
things
terrible that
domestic,
was happening in their own
right?
communities as a consequence.
Exactly.
That's
There's
right.
a connection between it. Now, mind you, this country's been bringing in immigrants whenever it's convenient for a long time. That's not a new thing. And they kick them out and make Americans mad
There's
at them.
only certain kind of immigrants that they're
Right,
concerned
right,
with.
right. And not the ones from Ireland, and places like that. But it's domestic and international, global, they go together.
It's all
But,
linked.
again, we're not taught the big picture. We're taught to compartmentalize it. And so, with your dad, when I look at those reports, every girl, I didn't realize I've been doing this for 25 years. Everybody, every report that I've seen, the young lady lost her children, has always lost her children due to something that you can go back to you can go back to heroin, you can go back to crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone for 25 years. And I still see it happening now.
That's right.
This is like what, almost 60 years later?
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Now Mr. Hip Hop Ambassador has just popped in, right? The great Hakeem Green has just popped in.
Mr. Green.
Hakeem, I don't know if you got a chance to hear some of this conversation. The great Professor Carter was going all over the map. I asked one question about hey, this guy coming back now.
Now he comes back.
Yeah. So I did catch the conversation. Peace, Larry. Peace, everybody.
Peace,
I did catch the conversation, and I just wanted to say that it's unfortunately music to my ears, because coming up during the crack era, and having a somewhat, I wouldn't say thorough knowledge, but being made aware of the effects of heroin, my mom making me aware of her former classmates leaning on Main Street and High Street and Center Street, almost touching the ground, and that being drugs, the effects of it, and me not to do it. And then when crack hit,
Done that.
I saw all my friends get taken down, and the brilliance that was destroyed because of crack cocaine. And so when I became a hip hop artist, I was dedicated. I committed myself to speaking out against it. My biggest record is about weed. I think we can all agree weed is different. But I have tons of other songs that specifically warn against crack dealing,
Hakeem, I'm laughing because my FBI 5 started with me selling it. Shit.
selling weed.
Remember
Yeah,
when it wasn't illegal?
It is the gateway
Not me
drug.
burning up newspapers in Rutgers, Newark, or in the street fighting the police.
Wait, so are we now a part of your FBI file just by default since we're on the radio with you? Should I be logging off right now?
Ain't nobody paying
Too late now.
Nobody wants to know what I'm gonna do.
Well, check this out. No, check this out to that point. So in 2006, a friend of mine sent me FBI files that were released under the Freedom of Information Act about death row records
Mm-hmm.
basically being a money laundering operation from the very get-go.
That's
Come
right.
on.
And so the FBI and law enforcement had a detail on them, and there was a connect from taking, coke and bringing it to the East Coast, and the safe house was on Eaton Place in East Orange. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the video madism, big shout out to Miss Jackson, whose home served as a kind of a coming up space for a lot of us in high school. We were doing these barbecues in her backyard during the
Yes, I
summer.
remember them.
It started out about maybe 50, 60 of us. By 93, it's like 2,000 people on the block. And Naughty by Nature would then adopt these barbecues, and then they did a big one
Yes.
across the street of Oval Park that was on BET. Big, huge event. So anyway, in 2006, I'm reading these FBI documents, and Eaton Place in East Orange comes up, and they start talking about our barbecues in the documents.
And that's how.
So
And y'all wasn't
now,
selling weed. Y'all wasn't
no.
even selling
Actually, I
weed.
wasn't.
It was
I wasn't.
barbecue.
No. It was something else going on. Now, mind you, this is when Act Now is going on.
Yeah.
I'm activism. I'm anti. I'm going to the protests. We're talking about the U.S. government and it's smashing. And my friends are like, "Hot, they gonna come get you. You better stop that. Watch it. They gonna send the feds is gonna come get you. No, they're not gonna come get me. They building a case against y'all. You guys are the ones bringing law enforcement into our community.
That's right.
So I've had this thing for a long. If you in the streets like that, if you really in the streets like that, you are law enforcement because
Better
that's the
believe
reason why you're there. You give law enforcement to do two things: one,
it. Serve
destroy
the
the
purpose.
community with this substance, and secondly, to lock everybody up.
That's right.
Right,
Serving the purpose.
serving a purpose, and we haven't learned our lesson.
They didn't
Um,
know that they were just a pawn. They're just pawns. That's
but it's
crazy.
yeah, but it was so obvious though.
It's obvious to you. You projecting your intelligence onto others.
But Hakeem, we don't even need like COINTELPRO anymore because
No,
when I
you got
see
Facebook and
the,
Twitter.
exactly, people just give stuff up. And again, going back to what I said, if you didn't know, if you don't know the history, right? And I'd say a lot of older people will say, well, they're not doing this, they're not doing that, but they didn't come through the same time. And if this whole term of intergenerational is that's how I lived in the projects. We lived intergenerational. There was no word for it. And so we're missing that connection. And so you see it, like I see it in those reports. And, you see it in terms of what you're saying. When you're starting from scratch. It's almost like our young people are starting from scratch every decade because they don't have the quote intergenerational knowledge that I remember, it's just how we live. I didn't know it was a big deal until, now I'm looking and say, wow, a lot of these young people, unless it's in your family, are never going to have, and now it's a luxury, never going to know what it's like for me to be 9 years old and you're 90 and we just sitting there having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I said this earlier, that how I grew up was not really, really different from my great grandmother, my great great grandmother. It's a different time, but our values were, because the drugs cut all of this off, and they knew that they were cutting it off. They knew for a while they were cutting it off. This wasn't like we talking about with Trump 2025. All of this didn't just happen under Trump. There was the complicit Democrats, because they've been very complicit along the way. And a host of other things historically that have happened have, landed here. So anyway, go ahead.
No, I just, I have this conversation all the time because, much of my music now is especially about pushing back against it. And I've been trying to engage my brothers and sisters since '89.
What you said was interesting. I'm listening to this Black anthropologist, and she talked about how we navigated without during the paleo period, without all the challenge, the drama and stuff we had. And remember, and Larry may remember because he's old enough, when we used to call each other brother and sister, and then all of a sudden that became a problem for people because
Yeah.
it makes it easy to hurt somebody that you don't see as having a connection, right? And even something like that who was taken from us. People used to just say, hey, that's my brother, or in church, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so. We don't even do that anymore because it's not the norm. That's foundational. So anyway, Mr. Ham, we've been waiting for you, Adimu, to jump in whenever you wanted to.
No, you haven't.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, you kept keep popping away.
No, you haven't. No, you haven't.
Yes, we have.
I got it all up in there trying to get your behind in this for a minute. And we've been talking about a lot, and you've been in and out of all this, but we definitely try to set the stage for you on several fronts, right?
He's keeping y'all honest, FYI. He said, "No, y'all not."
All right, Larry, do your thing.
Yeah, the 26th is coming quick. We've been talking about Trump and the rise of Trump like a dog, right? So go ahead and jump in and talk about some organized resistance with the convention.
Yeah, we're having the Martin Luther King People's Convention, Justice and Resistance, on Saturday, April 26th, from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Essex in Newark, New Jersey. It's free. It's open to the public, and we want everybody to come. So far, the convention has been endorsed by 187 organizations and counting. And we want everybody to come out so that we can work on putting together a people's agenda for justice, continued resistance to these attacks on our community. Of course, from the Trump, Musk regime, but it's not only from there that we're getting these attacks. These attacks have been going on for damn near 60 years. It's just Trump stepped on the accelerator. He's doing something different. I mean, he's doing something the same, but the quantity and the intensity is definitely on a different level. And we are in a fascist period. The predominant political tendency in this country is a fascist tendency. That's a tendency that has seized control of the government, all three branches, and we're gonna have to fight our way out of this. And it's a very dire situation. I mean, I've seen at least 9 presidential administrations in my life, and they were all pretty bad. You know, it was a gangster's row, you know, but some were worse than others. And this one we have right now, you know, we're heading toward full-on dictatorship. There's no other way to describe this, because the executive branch now is literally trying to seize control from all the other branches. Everything that you learned in school, you can throw that out the window. That whole thing about 3 branches and checks and balances, that's out. Trump is challenging the judicial branch. He is ignoring judicial decisions. And he pretty much, you know, had it his way because he appointed more members to the Supreme Court than any other president. In one term, he appointed 3 people. And he stands to appoint some more during this term.
That's right.
And they do a ruling that says he can't be prosecuted as long as he's president. So he's like, you know, I'm gonna take this card, this get out of jail card, you know, and I'm gonna do everything I want to do. So it's a pretty dire situation, and all this stuff that they're doing to the so-called undocumented folks now, that's just a dry run for us. We are really the target of the Trump administration. When I say we, I'm talking about Black people. That's what they're working their way to. But because of the complexities of American society, because of the history of Black resistance to oppression, they had to kind of take, the long way around. They're still going to the destination, but they're going the long way around. Like the undocumented is the low-hanging fruit. That's an easy target. But all of this apparatus that Trump is putting together is to ultimately suppress the resistance that they expect to get from the Black community. And they're going to get it. One way or the other, they're going to get it. I mean, everything looks calm now. People talking about Black people not demonstrating. They're not sure. Just give it a minute. Give that cake, give that pie a little time to cook, because he's attacking everything. I mean, every social program that exists, they're attacking. They're cutting it, they're gutting it, or they're eliminating it. And not only are they attacking.
He left. I'm gonna get ready to
He's on a
go.
roll too.
But tell Larry what I said. He ended up saying the same thing. We're the largest unwanted group.
That's right.
Right? We're the largest unwanted group. And this is about us. When you look, birthright citizenship, that starts with us.
That's
All
right.
of this starts with us. And so you're absolutely right. Even this whole thing of how they're weaponizing Judaism, they're weaponizing this as much as they can, because they got to pit. Remember I said capitalism requires a couple of things: white supremacy, chaos and confusion, and keeping everybody at each other's throats. So they never turn around and look and see how we all being pimped.
That's right. That's them. Absolutely.
So I'm going to get ready to go as soon as Larry comes back, but I'm sure Asia can handle it. Asia, you got this?
No.
He's coming back.
Well, you know that Asian, you know that.
I got to
my generation used to say, "What we send you to school for, girl?" You talking about no.
One of my friends, they was like, "So how's the radio going?" And I was like, "Well, the elders are on," and I just like shut up when they're on, and so that's like, and I'm not going after y'all neither. Y'all not getting me. You're not tricking me. I'm here to learn. See, y'all say we don't learn. I'm learning. I'm listening. I'm taking it in. And so if I have a question, I'll ask. But I'm just here. I'm just happy to be here. Thank you, y'all, for letting me be here and listen to you.
I so appreciate the invitation, and it's interesting that Mr. Ham and I keep crossing paths.
Yeah, because y'all about the same age. That's right. Y'all are about the same age.
Yeah.
So he said that. He was like, "Yeah, y'all the same age." As if you're not a part of the y'all. He's the them. It's the y'all. That was funny.
Listen, you guys take care. I got to run. Be well.
All right, Professor.
Thank you again.
Appreciate you jumping in.
Peace.
Yeah, you got cut off with them, but you were on a roll. Can you remember your thoughts? You recap.
Yeah, man, it's the reception. I got bad reception here, but just the point I'm trying to make is that we're at the very beginning of what is going to be significant social upheaval in this country. I mean, on several fronts. First of all, regardless of whether Trump paused the economic tariffs or not, he's already put in motion the next recession. And recession is going to cause hardship for people in this country and around. I mean, even if they don't do the tariffs on the rest of the countries, there's 125% tariff on Chinese goods. I never heard of 100% tariff before. So if you buy a BYD, which is a Chinese-made car, BYD, by the way, stands for Build Your Own Dream. If you buy a BYD in China, which is the cheapest electric vehicle that they make on the earth, $30,000. A Tesla in the US costs $60,000. That means that the $30,000 BYD, once it comes into the port of Newark or the port of Seattle or the port of San Francisco, it will cost more than $60,000. And this is a tariff now on all Chinese goods. Do you know how many businesses buy something from China? Like so many, particularly agricultural products. Like all those farmers in the West and the Midwest that voted for Trump, they're going to be hurting. They're going to be hurting because who do they sell their soybeans to?
China.
Who do they sell that's right. Who do they sell their pork products to? Who do they sell their wheat to? China. And now it's going to be 125% tariff. It's going to be a problem. So, the other thing to keep in mind is that every major, not major, but every world war was preceded by an economic crisis.
Yes, sir.
Both World Wars I and II were preceded by economic crisis. And, the U.S. has been making all this noise about China. And I mean, I've never heard so much talk about war in my life. I mean, at one time, all my life I've heard talk about war. But in the last 24 months, I've heard more talk about going to war with Russia, China, Iran, those three, than I've heard in my entire life about war against any other country. And the war hadn't even started, but they're talking about it. The other war that they're talking about is civil war. I mean, if you follow podcasts, even talk show, regular conventional talk shows on the corporate media, if you listen to enough political discussions, you will hear people seriously ask the question, are we on the verge of a civil war in the United States? That's the other thing I haven't heard about. Now, I've heard about white supremacists wanting to start a civil war, but that was always a marginal discussion. I mean, it's actually in the kind of mainstream media. It's not big, but it's there. People are openly talking about civil war. And if they're not talking about civil war, they're openly talking about the possible breakup of the United States of America. Like, for instance, there are states already who are saying that they are not going to comply with Trump's federal orders. I mean, think about that. Is the federal government. Now, I'm on their side, right? I don't want the governor of New Jersey to cave into Trump. But what happens when federal marshals are sent to New Jersey or Homeland Security police are sent to New Jersey, or the president gives the FBI a directive that they have to go en masse to New Jersey to do whatever, to seize immigrants, to seize undocumented, whatever. What happens when the governor says, no, you federal officers, you federal police cannot enter my state? I mean, this is it. Like already, for instance, right now, because they've abolished abortion in certain states like Texas, women who need abortion are going to quote unquote blue states to get an abortion. There are some women that have left their state to come to New York, and the federal government, the state of Texas, has issued arrest warrants for them. for these women who come to get abortion. There have been arrest warrants issued. The governor of the state of New Jersey and the governor of New York has said they are not going to observe those arrest warrants. So what happens when there's a possible violent confrontation between state police and federal police? This is what I'm saying. You know, it's a serious situation that we have now. And you know, Trump is already saying, I mean, I know people don't want to hear Trump, but look, you know, if somebody's trying to be a dictator, you might want to get at a little attention. You know, Trump is already saying he's going to stay for a third term. And when the reporters ask him, they say, well, the Constitution doesn't allow you to stay for a third term. He says, well, there are ways. Mm-hmm. Like, what ways are he talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, if I could just preview. We had a preview on January 6th. Mm-hmm. He sends his people in.
Jump in, Asia.
Yeah,
to overthrow the government.
If I could just jump in, like, really quickly, in terms of, I think we now more than ever need to rely on the laws of our land. The U.S. Constitution, the New Jersey Constitution, the New York Constitution, because Trump is trying to do things, but it's the law that is not allowing him to do it. And so when states are saying we're not going to abide by Trump's his executive orders, is because Trump doesn't have the power to do what he wants his executive orders to do. And so he wanting to birthrights, like he's signed an executive order, like doing away with birthrights. That's crazy because the U.S. Constitution, it's enumerated in the Constitution. And when it went through the court said, yeah, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? And of course, I'm like saying it in a very simplistic way, but that's what the courts did. And so, and it was said like before that the courts are not going to save us. The courts have been saving us. And so in terms of media, it may not seem like it because of what's being reported. And because at the end of the day, the news outlets, like the business and whatever's going to sell and putting fear into people's hearts. I do take comfort. And when I say comfort, I'm not saying I'm being, I'm just like chill and just like, hey, every day is every day. This is great. But I take comfort that our Constitution, whether it be the U.S. Constitution, whether it be our state constitutions, especially in New Jersey, that they are going to protect us as much as we need them to protect, because they have been. They have been. And I'm not saying that this is not a fight. I'm not saying that all is well in the world. I'm not saying that at all. But there are people in our court system, whether it be lawyers, whether it be judges, that they are truly fighting on behalf of our rights, of our constitutional rights in the USA. And whatever Trump is able to do is because he can do it as president, because he does have powers that is enumerated by our Constitution, Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. But everything that he wants to do, he can't do it. And he hasn't been doing it. And
well, make haste slowly. It's bit by bit. It's chipping away bit by bit by bit, right? And whoever controls the law enforcement agencies in this country get to decide who gets stopped and who is allowed to pass. And the law enforcement agencies ultimately work under him. I was surprised when the Supreme Court told him to bring back the man who got shipped off to El Salvador illegally. I was surprised that they forced him, the administration, to bring him back. But I wonder how many times that particular Supreme Court is going to buck Trump's once. I have very little faith in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and that's one court system, and that's not where everything starts in. So we have our New Jersey's Superior Court. New York has their own court system, and then there's the federal courts, and so there's different districts. And so things don't go straight to the.
But what happens?
So things don't. Yeah. And so things. And also, I am speaking, disclaimer, I am speaking recent college law school graduate of Rutgers Law in 2023. And so my knowledge in comparison to Professor Carter is way different from where I am now in my career. Also, I do commercial real estate, and so I'm not a constitutional human rights type of lawyer whatsoever. But I'm speaking from my perspective and what I have engaged in. So that's just my disclaimer. But things don't go straight to the U.S. Supreme Court. It has to make its way to the Supreme Court, and there are certain things that it just there are things that they have to go through the state courts, and there are certain things that have to go through the federal courts. It's not an automatic, and so, but so you don't think, and I think that's a fair statement because
No, it's more or less it's the chipping away. So just to give an example on a local level, we have New York City, we have ICE set up in Rikers Island. I think that's illegal. No, I think that how that was made to happen was illegal. There were laws that were broken that because of I don't know how they sidestepped the law, but they sidestepped the law. Who's going to enforce it? ICE should not be on Rikers Island, but they are.
Yeah, and so again, I'm not an expert in this whatsoever. That is definitely my disclaimer. I'm going to keep saying it. But in terms of immigration lies in the power of the President of the United States. And so that is not enumerated in state constitutions. And one second. And so state constitutions can't infringe on the powers of the president. And so again, immigration is of the powers of the President of the United States that is enumerated in the U.S. Constitution. And so when you're talking about abortion rights, abortion is not enumerated. And so what the Supreme Court, the only things that they can make decisions on are things that fall under the U.S. Constitution. And so what the Supreme Court did in their recent ruling regarding abortions, they're saying, hey, we're not going to make this, we're not going to hold the authority of abortion rights at the federal level. And they were able to do that because they said the U.S. Constitution, that is not enumerated. Abortion rights, women's rights of that sort is not enumerated in the U.S. Constitution. And so they threw it back at the state level. And so that's why every state has its own laws regarding it. And so, again, it's just like a matter of, okay, what is Trump trying to do, and where's that power lie in? Does it lie in the states? And so, if that power lies within the states are its own sovereigns. That's why every state has its own state constitution. And so, Trump, although he's the president of the United States, he can't infringe on states' constitutions. And vice versa. If the power is held in the U.S. Constitution, states can't infringe on that federal constitution, on the U.S. Constitution. And I know I'm not sure if this is making sense.
Absolute sense.
Yeah, it's something that I had to learn and digest and study and cry over, literally. But it's just a matter of what rights are we talking about? And where are those rights enumerated in? And once we understand where those rights are enumerated in, then we can have a discourse. Because what Trump is doing, he thinks he is king, and he said it himself, right? New York, the Times said it. And so whatever Trump wants to do doesn't mean he can do it. And the courts have been telling him, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. But there are certain things that he can do. And going back to immigration is held in the power.
So to the immigration part in New York City, that happened as a power. That happened because of
great Ed Wiley and Jonathan Austin are going to have the last say, and the last say is that we over time.
Amen. It's never enough time. Never.
We got it in the show, right? Demo, I put in the chat the registration for the convention. You can go ahead and give us the last word as to why that's important. We're gonna be on this for a minute because Asia, you back, and we got to keep you now to keep these conversations hot, right? We'll be back with some more noise, with some more volume next week, right? So then we're gonna give you the last word. He said yes.
If people want to register for the convention,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes.
people want to register for the convention, they can call 973-801-0001 or go to Facebook, go to the People's Organization for Progress Facebook page, and you'll see the posts that have the link to register for the convention. But, you know, if you have difficulty with that, you can always call 973-801-0001 and get registered for the convention. Don't wait too long. Seats are filling up fast.
We have how many endorsing organizations now?
Right now, with what I've just received, we have 191 endorsers.
191. So we're closing
191 organizational endorsers.
One of the highlights of
closing in on 200, right?
One of the highlights of the convention day is a gubernatorial forum. So the gubernatorial candidates respond to the agenda that we set forth, right? So this ain't nothing to miss. We say nothing to miss. This is
that's the afternoon.
From the bottom up, coming from the people. The ultimate check and balance in this is the authority of the people fighting for democracy and putting these crazy people on their heels because we the people. Right? So with that, y'all, we'll see you next week. And you
Good
don't
night.
stop.
Oh. Period. Good night, y'all.
All right.